Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is a Shadow Warrior 2 No Pain, No Gain walkthrough. This is being played on the PC, and we are starting out in All in a Day's Work, which is the tutorial mission for the game. This is a project that I've been wanting to do for a long time, because I love this game, and at this moment in time, a lot of the projects that are coming out as far as new games, they've not really been something that I want to cover, not really something I want to showcase on the channel for various reasons, and it's left me with an opportunity to cover some other things, and this is a passion project because it's something I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and it's something I wasn't really able to do until I upgraded my machine, because when I tried recording this game previously on my old hardware, because the game is so fast and because it's so detailed, I would have a lot of artifacting problems with the screen, and the recordings always came out every so often looking a little bit crazy. So now that we've upgraded and I'm looking into trying to fix my stuttering problem, I thought I'd try this game. And what I'm going to be doing, guys, is I'm going to be doing the main missions, I'm going to be doing a challenge run, and hopefully it will help anybody who's trying to get through this game just on standard. And if anybody wants to try and do the challenge as well, I'll be outlining what the details are so you can have a crack at it, because Shadow Warrior 2 is designed in such a way that you can do some pretty interesting things with this game. But at the beginning here, you're being introduced to the Fangs and some of the melee enemies. This is an enemy that will charge at you and has a tendency to whip you with its tongue. When it does this, you can slash the tongue to get it off you. Depending on how quick you are when it comes to getting rid of that will depend on how the rest of it plays out. But sometimes it can be advantageous to be pulled in, other times not so much. The tutorial is introducing you to the Sting, which I'm probably going to be calling the Stinger, which is an input command you can use with the sword in this game, which is forward and attack, and you can charge it and you will do a thrusting move that does an incredible amount of damage. This is one of the most powerful moves for the entire game, and you're going to see me using it an absolute whole bunch, so you should do it too. Because it is absolute, that's its power. Power absolute. It has no match when you do it in the correct way with the correct weapon and on the correct enemies. And once you interact here with the mysterious artifact, it's going to introduce you to the first Temple Guardian, who is an enemy that you're going to see later on quite a lot, and he has a whole bunch of different moves. You can parry him if you want to, as the game's telling me. You can do a whole bunch of different things. I'm just going to dodge his moves and then hit him with the Sting, and then proceed to take on the hammerheads that he spawns on his little interim phase here. So to describe the essence of the challenge that I'm going to be doing, guys, I'm going to be trying to do a low-level run of the game. And how Shadow Warrior works is when you kill enemies you get experience, and once you fill your experience bar, it will level you up and give you a skill point and enable you to make your character stronger. If you look in the bottom right hand corner, I think the yellow energy that's filling that serpent, that dragon emblem that's on my hood, every time I get a kill you'll notice it fills up a little bit, and then when it fills to max, what will happen is you'll get a full heal and Wang will level up. So I'm going to be doing as little combat as possible while still having a good time with the game and doing what needs to be done, guaranteeing that I am essentially underleveled for most of the encounters. If you've ever played this game before, you know this game is super exploitable. It has incredibly generous checkpoints, it has incredibly generous respawns, it has so many different setups that enable you to get ludicrously powerful. You can literally overlevel the entire game by grinding and getting the right equipment and the right drops and upgrading the right attachments on your weapons and completely turn the game into an absolute joke. If you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. That's one of the playstyles you can do in a looter shooter, and I'm sure lots of people have. But for the purposes of making this a bit more interesting and a bit more arduous, I am going to avoid that. The second thing I'm going to be avoiding is using the healing flame. So as the game told me a couple of screens before this sequence that we're on right now, taking on these bugs, these mega arachnids, I think they're called, as I use the revolver, which I like the revolver a lot, but you do a lot of reloading with this gun, especially when you're inaccurate like I am. But the healing flame and his ability that Wang has to essentially passively heal himself, There are some other means of healing in the game which I'm going to explain, but this is the one that the game is balanced around. And if you look in the bottom left hand side of my HUD, you'll notice that it says I have 100% HP and I have 100% Chi, or Ki, depending on how you want to say it. I'm assuming it's Chi because it's Chinese, right? Who knows? Anyhow, that is your magic power. The magic power can be translated into all kinds of different moves, and one of them is the meditative powers of the Healing Flame. So, if you hold the button for Healing Flame, you can run around and cast a heal on yourself, which is a slow ticking heal. And it's very effective. I recommend it highly if you're just wanting to get through the game. However, I don't want to use it ever, and you're going to see me use it a couple times in this run because I have it mapped to Q. And when I play other games, I use Q to change weapons. So whenever I go to change weapons at the beginning of this walkthrough, I'm going to be putting the Healing Flame on. And you're going to see what it looks like to get a visual cue of what it is, but I'm not going to be using it because I don't want to. I want to have a disadvantage. I want to have one of those amazing features that the game offers you taken away from me. Think of it as a debuff. So I will be avoiding using it at all time. Another restriction I'll be using is I will be choosing to only use Vanish as far as all the special moves go. Wang is going to get... There it was just then. That was Healing Flame. So, Wang gets the ability to use several different tools in his arsenal. There is the Grip of Murder, there is a few other ones, and a lot of them are very, very powerful. There are two I'm going to be using in the stipulations of this challenge run. One of them is Vanish, because it's going to enable me to do a lot of mobility stuff, and it's going to enable me to do a lot of damage, and damage is going to be an area that I'm quite lacking on this run, because I don't have the time to get set up correctly. The second one is going to be the... I forget the name of it because I've not really used it that much. I think it's something like Shadow Fury. It's the mode where the screen goes red and all the enemies glow white and you get a massive damage boost if you upgrade it. That's something else I'm going to be using. But other than those two, those are the only moves I'm going to be using. The only applications of my Chi will be for those. So no Healing Flame, only using those two abilities. And then as far as the upgrading systems work, there are a lot of tools in this game that enable you to regen your life, to make your life regen quicker, to give you a whole proponent of extra bonus passives. I'm going to be neglecting to use any of those for the extra challenge. And then the final thing will be there is stat cards that exist in the menu. I showed you a little bit of them at the start of this video. I recommend that you go in there and immediately upgrade the Sting, because it's going to help you on this early part of the game. But one of the options there is to upgrade your HP, your maximum HP, your maximum regeneration. There are a handful of healing related ones when it comes to how many medkits are dropped by enemies and the frequency of those medkits and how much those medkits can heal you, which is something I definitely should be upgrading, but for the purpose of making it, a little bit more miserable, I decided not to do that. And it must be said, guys, as far as healing goes, the only way that I'm going to be able to heal is if I can time a good level up, which can be useful but difficult to do later on. If the enemy drops a med pack, I can use that to heal, which can be good, but the detection on picking them up can sometimes get you killed. And then the final thing will be the passive healing stations that are littered around the game. So one of the cool aspects of the sandbox areas of Shadow Warrior 2 and its level design is that every so often, if you look on your map in the top right, you'll notice that there are stations, shrines that are dotted around the map. Some of them will give you a checkpoint, some of them will fill your key, and then one of them will fill your healing. These healing shrines are very, very useful because they regenerate over time. So what you can do is you can go around an area, tear up a storm, kill as many people as you physically can, and then when you start getting whittled down and hit, because it just kind of happens in this game, there's a lot of threats, there's a lot of danger, and some of the hitboxes are very generous, you can then move and backtrack using the incredible mobility to get to one of those healing stations, get your health back, and then get back into the fray. And if done correctly, you can sabotage and terrorize an entire map while alternating between those statues. And it works really, really well. You really don't need the healing or any kind of passive tools to help you out if you've got a scenario that suits it. The problem arises when you get to the levels that don't necessarily have them, or the levels that have them in an area that you can't really get to in any kind of expedient fashion. Because one of the things I wanted to do, guys, with the footage here is I wanted to make it as interesting as I could. If you're going to be sitting here and watching this for the next 3 hours, I want you to have a good time. And in the footage, a lot of the times, it's the easiest strategy in this game to pick the weapons that you like and stick with them and alternate with the attachments and things. So in the spirit of that, I'm going to mix my weapons up a little bit. You know, I'm going to be changing some of my tactics. The smartest thing to do on this difficulty with the damage parameters right now is to just use Sting on every single enemy because it's the strongest tool you have. But I'm going to try my best to use a lot of the guns and use a lot of the tools and make the gameplay look as fun and as interesting as possible. The last thing I want to do on this particular recording in this walkthrough is to run away all the time from enemies, you know, to just completely run away from a fight that I'm losing to try and heal. And of course, there are times when it is absolutely necessary, but I'd like to do as little as that as possible. However, it all depends on how the game works. And sometimes the game can be very cruel. The way that the game handles death is particularly cruel, because I was hoping to do this project no death. You can't pick things up while holding the Sting, which is unfortunate. So my original intention, guys, was to do no death on every level. So one of the stipulations that we're doing here, guys, is to maximise on being low level, we can only do main missions. When you only do main missions, you generally don't get the experience needed, or the tools, or the weapons, or the drops, or the equipment to give yourself the easiest time and the most fun, which is unfortunate. There's a whole host of RNG that lands in this as well, because there are a lot of weapons that you passively... There's me using Healing Flame again by accident. Luckily, you know, it was just me trying to change weapon and it wasn't anything else. Be careful of these chopper guys. They do... A lot of enemies like to jump at you in this game, and any jumping attack has an insane amount of distance and a big hitbox. There are times when no one touches you and you still take damage, so you have to be real careful with the perspective, especially if you increase the FOV. When you increase the FOV, you're going to get hit by people swinging 10 feet away. It's just the way the game works. Luckily, you are so mobile, hopefully you'll be able to stay alive. But my original intention was to do a deathless run of all the main missions. We can't do side missions, obviously. What I was speaking about before I mentioned the choppers, the levels have random weapon drops in the chests by the enemies. There are a whole host of them. There's a lot of unique weapons in this game, and what you want to think about, guys, you don't want to think of them as, oh, this is better than that and it's better than this. You want to think of them as a template for making it your own thing. Do you like how it looks? Do you like how it feels? Do you like the passive that it generally has? Because some of them have a passive. All they are is a blank slate for you to fill it. So changing weapons is kind of preference, and you don't need them, but some of them I personally prefer, and I don't get any of the guns I love in this walkthrough. All the good guns that I really like and I've got really fun setups with, I don't get them, and it's really unfortunate, but it's the way it works. So just be careful. But speaking of death, I need to finish that thought before I forget. Death in this game is handled in an interesting way that means I can't do a no-death run, pretty much. Especially not in this challenge run. And speaking of loot, I get the Z45 katana, which is just a... It's the weapon these enemies are using against me. It's got like a holographic blade on it, which is kind of cool, so I swapped it out for this one. I think the stats of these swords are pretty much the same. The only differences between the two is whatever the passive was. So feel free to experiment, find the one you like, and give them the wang. But death. Death in this game is handled incredibly relaxed, and it makes it very easy. When you die, you get respawned, you lose all your karma, you lose all your chi, and you lose some money, and the enemies get healed. So, for instance, if you're fighting a boss, the boss will get all their HP back. It's an interesting system, but it makes it almost impossible for a person like myself to make a walkthrough without any kind of cuts, especially with these stipulations. On a normal run, you can do the whole game without dying on no pain, no gain, because you're going to take the time to get the right equipment, you're going to be at the shop selling things, you're going to be upgrading a lot of the attachments to get the better attachments, and you're going to be an absolute murder machine. There's nothing wrong with that, you know, you can deathless most of the game. I think I've probably done it, because I've beaten No Pain No Gain two times before I did this recording. The first time I killed every single enemy in the game, did every single mission. The second time I experimented with every single gun in the game and doing unique setups, and then this time I wanted to do something slightly different. But the issue with death is it means I can't sync the footage, and when I try to do no death, you think, oh Chris, why not just restart the missions, right? Why not restart checkpoint and then go back to the start and then re-record? Well, the issue is you can't do that. And I didn't know this coming into this project. I had no idea that the game worked the way it did. So here's the first time I die, guys, is on the next mission. The next mission, I don't know the name of it, but I'll know it when it comes up. we're on my hero at the moment. I come really close to dying on this one, and I'm going to run away, which is going to be the only instance of me really going a big distance to try and find some HP. And I'm going to speed it up because it's really boring. But I die on the next mission, and I leave the mission, I teleport away, I go back to the main hub, and then I try to come back, and it puts me back exactly where I was with all the objectives at the same state. And I did some Googling to see if I could restart, or if there was a way to, you know, mission select or something, and you simply can't do it outside of playing the whole game again. And as much as I would really, really like to get a no-death run of this difficulty, I don't really want to be playing all the way through it again just to get to a level where I might die and have to do the same thing again. Because this is not an easy game when you put the right stipulations on. You know, it can get really, really difficult, especially later on. There's 2 missions where it does not complement the game at all, the particular challenge run that I'm doing here. It just gets real messy, and I have to get really creative. And of course, it's not the developer's fault. They give you a lot of tools in this game, and I think that this is a game where 99% of it can be done under any stipulations because you are so powerful and you can be creative and do so much damage. But there's that 1% of stuff where it just gets kind of ridiculous. And you'll see it, guys, because I'm going to keep the deaths in. I'm just going to transition out the interim between them. And on some of the missions, like there's one mission where I died about 5 or 6 times. And when you record walkthroughs, usually you edit the deaths out and it looks like you don't die at all. And most walkthroughs you'll die if it's a difficult game. But the deaths in this, if you watch them, some of them are just... Like there's times when I hit people with a sting and we trade and it kills me instantly. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? There's one time where I hit a robot and kill him and level up, but I don't get the heal because he kills me with an AoE. And it's just like, what the fuck's going on? Like, really weird stuff. But this is footage of me backtracking all the way to a med pack that I remembered, and then coming all the way back to this fight. And you'll notice I have 39 HP. I think I had 9 HP before I did that. So when I come back down here and start fighting him again, if I lose 9 HP, I would have died without picking up that med pack. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen. So I get the sting on him. This guy's really tanky, by the way, guys. One of the things you're going to notice if you do this, or if you do anything under-leveled, when you get to the big guys, they take a massive beating. And at the beginning of this game, you don't have any real damage. You don't have the kind of damage that's going to make him seem less than he is. And the game is designed in such a way that you can bump into guys just like him if you're not careful, which is something I need to start talking about, which is Shadow Warrior 2 and its interesting level design as we start hot-blooded. So this mission's pretty easy. This is a mission I've streamed before. You'll notice we've now got access to the dual blades. This is a weapon that when you swing it, it will fire ambient projectiles, like energy lasers. I like this weapon because it just looks cool. But we're going to be doing the 3 objectives here, taking on the enemies and being as careful as we can. We're still learning the ropes of the games and still getting tooltips, even though I don't really need them. I could have turned them off, and I do apologise about that, because the HUD at times in this game can be very cluttered. This is a deeply flawed game, but I still love it for many reasons, because it gets the fundamentals right. But Shadow Warrior 2, the main big difference between this and Shadow Warrior 1 is that in this game, each of the level is like a hub world. You come into a zone, it's this fully realised large space that's generally quite cosmetically and thematically different than the last one you were in, and they're these self-contained hubs of stuff to do. So if you look in the top right, you'll notice the map is showing all kinds of icons all over there. There are chests to find that have loot in them, there's money to pick up, there's items to pick up, there's shrines everywhere, there's mobs of enemies to kill. And how the game is governed is, each of the areas is populated by enemies, and then there is the main objective that you have to do, which is usually highlighted in both gold and red, like the arrow that's on my map right now. If you look at my character up there, the white arrow, do you see how there's that breadcrumb, Jesus Christ, terrifying, breadcrumb trail of black dots leading me to the main objective? This is the only thing that I have to do at this moment. If I kill these gold diamonds with the red triangles inside of them, these hammerheads, I will do one of the objectives and it will lead me to the next one. When I do all 3 objectives, I'm fine, I've done the level, I can leave. That's how the game works. However, that's not the extent of what you can achieve here. There are enemies everywhere in this location, and some of them are even uniques. and the uniques have got even better drops. You'll notice just then, I got in a fight with the main objective, I backed up using the dash, and I bumped into some ambient fangs. This is a bad news situation, because the fangs themselves are not the most dangerous enemy, but they're not the enemies I'm meant to be killing, which means they can be a lot stronger. The enemies that populate the map, depending on where you go, can tend to be very dangerous and a lot stronger than the enemies that you're coming here for. The guys who are mission priority will generally go down much quicker than everybody else, so you have to be really careful. And in a game where you spend a lot of it kiting, a lot of it moving and getting out of danger and making sure the enemy's chasing you rather than the other way around, if you run away into a bad place, you can literally run into a den of enemies far stronger than the enemies that you're running away from. And it leads to these interesting moments of you getting absolutely swamped by almost everything in the game. And it's crazy, it's really crazy. It can lead to great drops, great loot, and a lot of experience, like just then when I killed it I got a big boost and it leveled me up, but it can also lead to getting nearly instantly killed. The names of the enemies give you an idea of how tough they are, and usually the size of the enemy will tell you how dangerous it is too. The bigger the enemy, the more dangerous they are for being able to one-hit you when you're low level. Anything bigger than this guy, when they're tall, if it hits you with like the overheads that they do, you're dead. It's a one-hit kill, most of it. And they've got incredibly generous detections, you have to be very careful. But the Superior Toro is the same as the Guardian that we fought before. You can parry this guy's moves and do a few different things. I like to bait him and then hit him on his downside. Right now I went for a parry and I mistimed it because the projectile's quite quick, and I don't really parry too much because I don't like how it works. Like, that seemed kind of okay, but maybe you can't parry that, who knows. But the thing with him to look at, you see on his HP bar where it says powers immune, it also says hardened and it says physical resist. So essentially, these buffs that he have tell me how I should be fighting him. One of the things I really respect about this game is you don't have to listen to them, but you really should. You can kill anything in this game with sheer attrition and just getting stuck in there and kicking their ass after a period of time. It's not the best way to do it though. Following those debuffs and killing them with elemental weaknesses is the easiest way to take on most situations, and the way that you definitely want to do it. Keep an eye on what those buffs are so that you can always have an idea of how to conquer them. When it comes to your weapons, you're going to want to have an element on every different weapon, and then a weapon that doesn't have an element, and maybe a weapon that has something unique like explosive rounds or something like that. The reason you need this is because you need to be able to deal the damage that the enemy is least resistant to. And every enemy is different because this is the hardest difficulty. They all have an incredible amount of resistances. It also works on you as well. You have resistances too, and their elements can rub off on you, and some of the status effects are the most dangerous aspect of Shadow Warrior 2. I die more to status effects that tick away at your life than anything else, because I literally can't do anything about them. Because I'm not upgrading the resistances to them, and because I'm not using Healing Flame, I can't, placate them and survive. Oh, this was a bad jump. But watch this. Look how quickly it puts you back in the game. All it did was get rid of all my ki, and it restored the enemy's HP. Which is not the worst thing in the world. I don't really mind that. I think that counts as a death. I really do. Which is kind of sad, but it doesn't feel like a death when it happens. That right there is a chi station. I just filled my chi after I lost it all, which was quite kind of it. But yeah, the worlds themselves, guys. World is populated by a variety of characters, some of them unique, who if you hunt down you'll get nice rewards. Fundamentally, you want to avoid fighting the locals unless you want to kill everything. If you want to kill everything, go for it, but be prepared for some fights because it gets really chaotic. And also the levels themselves seem to be instanced. They seem to be randomly generated each time you play. I know you can do some free roam on some of these locations to grind some levels and get some loot. But the reason that I say that I think that they're instanced, even though I know that some of them are, is when I do these missions, these main missions, I remember fighting different variants. So there's a mission later on where I come up against this floating guy with a hook who disappears a lot, and he kills me a decent amount of times. He's a bit of a dickhead. I don't remember him always being there, and for instance there's a segment on a level where I take on a huge priest. This is a tall creature with a big club, and I don't remember him being the the guy that I had to kill on one of the runs I've done previous to this. I remember it being a Toro, a group of Toros instead. So I feel like that the enemy types that you get might not necessarily coincide with the ones that I get, but it will be an enemy of the same caliber, and the enemies outside of their movesets are all kind of similar in concept. They all have a weakness, they all have a handful of moves, you know, they all are varying levels of being a dick. But that's the idea of the world and how it's going to work. Be careful killing the bunnies too. If you kill the bunnies, you'll eventually trigger a bunny lord, which is this rather dangerous but really, really lucrative enemy that will attack you in the most aggressive fashion. And this enemy can teleport at all times, so you will never get away from it. You have to stand your ground and you have to take it on. So if you do trigger one of those, you'll know you've triggered it because it plays a metal song, and then you'll get ambushed by something that will kill you really quickly. And the bunny lords have a glaring weakness. You're not going to see one in this run because I completely forgot to spawn one just to showcase it. But the idea is, if you run into an area where there's no enemies so you can fight one-on-one, all you do is you get next to it and you strafe around it. Get really close and strafe around it, and what it will do is it will try to attack you and try to straighten up as it does so, and it'll never be able to do that. So you can keep hitting it and moving around it and always moving away from the damage. And it will only maybe hit you once or twice if you get unlucky, but fundamentally you can do it without taking any hits, and every bunny lord will go down the same. If you're going for the achievement, you can get them killed very quickly just by doing that loop and killing them that way. And when you kill bunny lords, they give you incredible loot. They give you really, really nice attachments for your weapons, and potentially, you know, some of the best stuff in the game if you get lucky enough. But here on the Shadow Hills, we have a superior talon that we have to take on. That right there is a healing station, so I want to move away from it so I don't accidentally pick it up, because I'm going to need that for when things get too rough. This particular segment is difficult to do when it comes to mobility, because when Wang falls from a certain height, he does a dramatic landing, and that dramatic landing can get you killed. There's probably some tech that helps you cancel it, but it's one of those things that if I knew it, I'd forgot it. Another thing that's going to be really tricky at this moment in time, because I don't have the damage that I need, I'm going to be running out of ammo a lot. I don't have any upgrades on the passives on ammunition yet for picking up more of it, for having more of it, so I'm going to get into a spot of like every gun has nothing in it and I have to use the melee, which is not, you know, the end of the world because the melee is so superb. The melee is so fantastic in this game, much like the movement. You've probably noticed from the last 30 minutes of watching that my character is moving very quickly. I'm dashing constantly. Shadow Warrior 2 does have a run if you double tap forward, but there's no point in ever really using it because the dash is so much better in so many ways, and because it's something you're going to be doing a lot, you need to build up the muscle for doing it, especially for things like if you're going to do this run. Some of the bosses have so much HP on this run and you have so little damage that you're going to spend 7 full minutes tapping that dash button. And I have the dash button on shift on my keyboard and I tap it with my little finger, and I'm really glad that I played so much Guitar Hero, because if I didn't, there are times when I can feel my whole hand cramping because I'm pressing it so much, because I'm dashing so much, because it's so important. In a sequence like this, you won't notice it, but in those boss fights when it's constant, because you're constantly using it to get away from the damage, it can become a big pain in the ass. But the main dangers in this game are the collision. The collision on the enemies is going to get you stuck and mean that you can't use the mobility to get away. And wow, I don't know what's going on there. The game's gone all crazy. Another thing that you're going to get killed from is the collision on the world. If you get stuck against any of the geometry, and a lot of the geometry, for the most, like 80% of the geometry is fantastic and it doesn't give you an issue, but that remaining 20% is the thing that kills you, and it happens a lot. Because as long as Wang can be mobile, as long as you can be moving, you are almost never in full danger, because a lot of the damage you'll take will be chip damage and it'll be projectile damage from the weapons. When you stop moving, that's when trouble happens, because you get cornered, you get collided on, you just get gangbanged. And mobility is your greatest tool in this game. It's also the most fun tool in this game, and the reason that I love it so much. And it's a pretty simple system, but the reason that it works so well is because it cools down so quickly. If the dodge had a cooldown and large recovery frames, I would probably not enjoy this game as much. One of the reasons I like this game so much is because I can do what you're watching right now. Because I can be so mobile, so hyper-mobile, so frenetic. I can use movement as a defense instead of just using an overwhelming arsenal. And you get 2 dashes and 2 jumps essentially in midair. On the ground, you can keep dashing repeatedly, of course, because the time it takes in between the dashes is so short. You can just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And when you see me dashing, it's pretty much as quick as you can dash. As soon as you recover, you can dash again. If you jump and dash, you will do a long jump, a super long jump. And because you can double jump, you can jump and dash again. And one of the better ways to move that you'll see me using a lot is to jump dash, wait for yourself to lower until you're about to land, jump dash again, get even more height and even more, forward momentum, and then as you land, press dash to land. If done correctly, you'll do 3 dashes, you'll be so far away, you'll have some serious safe distance from the enemies, and you won't get that landing animation. However, if you're too high as you come down, you will do the landing animation, which you'll see me do several times. But there's some money and some bullets, and now we just have to gather the remaining of the chi crystals. Throughout the level there's going to be all kinds of wang scrolls and things to pick up, fortune cookies. There's a lot of collectibles that lead to giving you pieces of lore and information and various other things. You can partake in them if you want to, but for the purpose of this walkthrough I'm going to be expediting a lot of these processes. Right now you'll notice we have the Vanish ability, but I'm not using it too much. And you'll also notice that I've unbound the Healing Flame, and I've bound Vanish to Q, so you'll not see me using Healing Flame by accident anymore, and I will be able to abide by my rule set again. We just passed a healing station just then, so we can come over here. This guy right now, this guy who's on fire, he is an ambient enemy. I don't have to kill him. Luckily, he's not very strong, so he goes down with 1 sting, and then we can move over here and push towards the objective. The shotgun I was using earlier as well is the first shotgun that you're given, and it's called the Hauer, and it is an homage to Rutger Hauer, who was in the movie Hobo with a Shotgun and various other quality movies. Blade Runner's probably a better one to mention. Or maybe Blind Assassin if you're a classic Rutger Hauer fan. And it's a really, really cool homage to him, and he's passed away now, which is unfortunate. But it's nice to have it in there. I really appreciated it when I first saw it. And the gun I'm using right now is called the Deckard, because it's meant to be the weapon that Decker uses in Blade Runner. So you can tell that the developers have obviously got an interest and an appreciation of some good science fiction and some good movie stars and movie references. And the game is just full of really, really cool moments like that. I personally don't like this pistol too much. It's not a bad pistol, I don't really like how it looks. So it's one of the guns that I try not to use. But beggars can't be choosers, and right now I don't have any bullets. So I'm going to have to go with what the game gives me. And then we can teleport away, and we can start Industrial Espionage, which gives us 2 weapons afterwards, 2 skill points, and the Grip of Murder maneuver. And I believe that this is the place where I die for the first time. And it's on the final objective, which is really heartbreaking, because I got through most of this quite well. But if you look at this location, it couldn't be more different than the location we were just in. It's all futuristic, it's neon, it's beautiful, it's got holograms, it's got everything. It's a really superb location. I love the colour palette on this one. And it suits all the crazy cyborg ninja men, which is what we're going to be taking on, which is the Zilla troops. And we've got a couple of superior ones which we need to be very careful of, because did you see how many of the buffs he had? He's going to be one of the ones that takes a large amount of time to slay. And this room right here is a really fun room for learning to move. So if you've just started playing and you're running around not dashing at all and you're wondering why you're dying so much, it's because the dash in this game is so useful. And all I recommend you do is circle like you're playing zombies in Call of Duty. Just jump around, getting a couple shots off, reloading, and just make laps around the room. If it gets too overwhelming, go upstairs onto the second balcony just to thread out all the enemies, and then come back down after you've got yourself together, and then come back and start attacking them. At this moment in time, I'm going to be using a lot of the shotgun, get as close as I can and put the shells into them. I'm going to be using the sting to clear out some enemies, and I'm just going to be trying to be mobile. This is one of those rooms that suits this playstyle really well, because the enemies have a tough time navigating it and you get to fly. And you see the unique reload there on the Hauer where he throws the shells up and catches them, which is really stupid, but it's a fun one. There's a lot of nice animations in this game. You might have noticed that the guns take up a pretty large amount of space on the screen. There is a console command you can use on PC to change the scaling of the guns. It's R_weapon_FOV and then space and put a number. The base game has got, I think, 55, which makes the guns look really huge. I went in there and changed it to 65 and they looked a lot better. You can go higher, but it starts to look a bit weird. It's all up to you, it's all preference. But this guy's Toxic Vulnerable. I've put Toxic on my Chronicles of Riddick weapon, and I'm going to use the Sting on this weapon to hit this Zilla guy to do as much damage to him as I can, but unfortunately I'm getting teleported on, and I'm getting trapped. One of the criticisms I have of this game, outside of the collision, because I'm not going to talk about that because it just fucks me off so much, it's the blood on the screen. I really wish there was an option in the menu to turn the blood off the screen. I've talked about this in so many video games that there comes a point where I feel like I'm just shouting at myself in a strange, like, reverb chamber of critique. I don't know why we need blood on the screen. I just don't. Blood on the screen used to exist for a very specific reason. It used to be the only way you could tell that you were dying. In this game, there is a fucking life bar. I know when I'm dying. You don't have to tell me. And this game is particularly bad for it. I had half HP and my screen had got red on it. And I'm at that point, guys, where I do not want any effects on my screen unless I like them. I want my screen to be as clear as possible because I want to be able to see. I want my visibility. I want everything to be completely clear. I don't want to have anything obstructing what I'm trying to do. And when you completely cover the screen in blood, not only is it showing that I'm losing, so you're pissing me off on that front, but you're also making me lose even harder because you're making succeeding more difficult by fucking with my vision. And I've never liked this in video games. I like it in the purpose of a first-person shooter where it tells you that you need to take cover and then it goes away in a second, but this is not a game that has automatically regenerating life unless you spec that way, and I can't do that. So there's going to be times on this where that's me going for a few parries and just not getting any of them. See what I mean with the parry? Sometimes it feels great, sometimes it just feels weird. But in this game, not only does the screen go crazy, and it gets real crazy, but you can hear the heartbeat, you can hear everything, and it's completely redundant because it's unnecessary. We have a life bar. When you have a life bar, you should be able to turn this off. It should be a toggleable thing. I don't want to see this. You know, it's a weird thing, and it reminds me of Rainbow Six Vegas, if you ever played that game on Realistic. On that game, when you got shot, your screen got really bright, and everything looked like it was being just distorted. Like, look at this! Look how fucking stupid this is! And it starts going to almost grayscale, the colour comes out of it, the colour correction starts going monochrome. Like, everything about it is just... it's just bad news bears, and it's here to stay. And I know I'm one hit away from death because there's a life bar, and it's redundancy. It's redundancy and it's unnecessary, and I hate it. But in Vegas, when you got hit, your screen went really bright, and all the lights were just super exaggerated, and it was really difficult to see. And then if you got shot again, it completely inverted, and it went from being super bright to being super dark. And both of those vision types in that game made it almost impossible to shoot back. So you had to wait before you could fight back because you just die. And I never understood why, in that moment of us getting damaged and being put on the back foot, they make the game harder. It's one of those weird things, like, you're injured now, so let's make the game even more difficult when you're at a disadvantage. And it just doesn't make sense. It's such a strange design, and I'd love to talk about it, because I feel like this mechanic exists because first-person shooters exist. Why does the screen go red in Shadow Warrior 2 when this is nothing like classic first-person shooters? This is closer to traditional shooters of the arena types than anything else. Like, this game's got the fast mobility, it's got the weapon wheel full of dozens of guns, it's got the, the ridiculously over-the-top action. That doesn't sound like fucking Halo, does it? That doesn't sound like Call of Duty, where you can carry 2 guns, and every 2 minutes you have to sit down and have a bloody think about what you've done, because it was a war crime. Like, this is as old school as it gets. Those old school games didn't bombard your fucking screen with nonsense. There was a little highlight there, but it wasn't as crazy as this was. And they had the HP bars, which is perfect, And I just feel like the only reason it does it is because every other game did it. That's the only reason, It's one of those things that's happening all the time now. One game does something and everybody has to imitate it. And they're all just monkey see, monkey do with it, which is frustrating because this game really didn't need it. You know, I feel like the game does a fantastic job of telling me I'm dying with this wonderful green bar, and this wonderful green bar is not a new invention, it's been around a long time. And it's the Kingdom Hearts thing, isn't it? Kingdom Hearts, not only does it flash the screen, but it also makes a blinking noise, which is fantastic if you want to throw yourself out of fucking building directly headfirst into concrete. Do the developers play their own games? I do wonder sometimes. But let's talk about some of the techniques in the games. So, steadily through the game, as you do the levels, you're going to unlock abilities, and the abilities are really, really awesome. The abilities I'm going to be prioritizing, guys, are damage and movement. These are the two that I like the most, and these are the two that complement my playstyle. Of course, you don't have to do that, you can do what you want. There's a lot of tools in here. The sting move that I use with forward and attack is the move that I go to the most because it takes forward momentum and it enables me to keep moving really quickly, and I can charge it on the move and do a lot of damage. You can also do a Whirlwind Slash, which is pretty good, even though I don't use it that much. If you use left or right while you hold the charge button for the weapon, he will hold the sword sideways and he'll do a spin attack. You'll see me do that, you might have already seen me do it a little bit. And then if you press backwards and attack, you can charge a projectile, which is like a laser beam that your sword will fire out, a sonic boom of energy that will go forward and do a decent amount of damage. I used to use that move a decent amount, but it was one of those things where I felt like I was using it to use it more than anything else. So you're not going to see me use it too much on this run, because it's, as much as I like the idea of it, I never feel like it does the damage I want it to do. This is also another room that really suits this particular playstyle. Because of the way this room is set out, you can bait them to chase you and herd them like a shepherd all the way down on this left-hand side, and then you can jump across to the opposite part of this balcony, and they can't really do much because they can't follow you like this. And because you're so mobile, they're teleporting around a lot, and as they spawn in after a teleport, they're vulnerable, so you can hit them with a stinger and get out of there. One of the things to watch out for in this game, though, on the harder difficulty, is that the enemies like to parry. They like to parry and they like to counterattack when you do certain attacks. You'll notice that I don't use normal sword slashers too much, and the reason for that's not because they're not good, because they are good, but I'll only really use them when I knock an enemy down. On No Pain No Game, a lot of the enemies will just parry your moves and then they'll do a quick counterattack, or they'll even do a programmed evade when you attack them. There are a lot of enemies that have these programmed evades. Luckily, the Stinger seems to be one of those moves where they don't evade it, and even if they do, it has such a big hitbox, you can generally... See, just then, do you see him parry me? On the he parried me... Oh no, I went to parry him. But that second hit on those normal attacks, he just deflected it. So you've got to be really careful with stuff like that. You might use those moves all the time in circle strafe enemies on normal, and it works a treat. But when you go onto this difficulty, you're going to get your ass slapped. Look at the map right now. See all the money signs? Those are the yellow signs. The purple signs are bullets. And of course the green cross is a healing station, which I didn't even need to use, which is nice. And then in the room there is a med pack that's dropped. There's also what looks like a piece of upgrade for a weapon right there. A component of blight. And a fortune cookie, so lots of symbols on the map. You can move the position of the map if you want to the left hand side, which I think is a really, really nice thing that they did. I think you might have to toggle it though. I didn't mess around too much with that, guys, so I don't know. It's been a while since I played this game. I just wanted to come back and make this project, because I really, really enjoy this. It's also available on console. I don't know if the console enables it to run at 60 frames per second on the Xbox X. I hope it does, because playing this at 30 frames a second is probably fucking miserable. And it's super tragic, because you pay all that money for a console, you'd think it'd be able to run the fucking games, right? The whole point of this game is that it's fast, it's fluid, it's responsive, and it's fun. You put it in 30 frames a second and all of that goes out the fucking window. Like, it's just miserable. But now we have to move back across to the other side of the area for this industrial espionage. We're coming up on the area where I die, guys. So, 43 minutes and the next few minutes were completely deathless. We were doing really well. Except for that time when I fell off. I'm almost certain when I fell off it counted as a death, because it punished me like a death. The easiest way to spot dying in this game is it takes your chi off you, it takes the karma off you, it gives the enemies their life back, and it makes you invisible. That's how you spot when someone's died. So falling off was pretty much that, and I didn't know that, I don't think. Oh, these are the ladies that remind me of the robot lady from Mass Effect. If you remember, you know, the droid that you reprogrammed, they remind me of her. And we've got an elite floater drone that is vulnerable to fire and immune to ice. But all of these enemies here, because they have that symbol on them, do you see the gold triangle that I mentioned? It tells you that you have to kill them. And this is the spinning attack. Pretty cool, right? I love that this game has an eye for melee. It's just something that a lot of first-person shooters are just not really trying to do. And this game really went heavy on it. Condemned is another title by Monolith that I really appreciated that game went in with a melee and parrying focus. And I really enjoyed it because of that. Same with Chronicles of Riddick. The Riddick games that were made by Starbreeze. I thought those games had a really, really nice eye for melee. It's just something that first-person shooters don't do enough, and I should say high-profile first-person shooters, because there's a lot of first-person shooters that do it. It just doesn't necessarily mean that they do it very well. Or very successfully, you know? Because there are some games that do things well that aren't successful and nobody knows about them. Like, I'm wondering how many people know about this game, because if you look at the reviews for this game, they are not favourable. People do not like this game. And I know why. I absolutely know why. And it's warranted. You know, there are a lot of features in this game that are very frustrating. The sandbox quality of the levels, the kind of cookie-cutter instanced aspect of the mission design, and how none of it has like a central aesthetic and it jumps around all over the place. Everybody was pretty disappointed with that. The looting system, how the looting system is so intense and overwhelming, and it doesn't seem to have the interface to deal with it. And I completely agree with that too. I remember on my second run through of this game, I wanted to do some upgrading and mess around in the shops. And selling things and breaking things down and upgrading things, you can't do any of it in bulk. You have to do it individually, manually, and it takes forever. I spent like 2 hours just upgrading shit. And the problem is, like 2 hours later, you have an entire inventory full of stuff again to do the same thing with. And none of it is streamlined, none of it is easy. If you look in the menus, which I haven't really gone into too much detail with, when you look in there, a lot of the HUD and the UI is kind of confused, and it's 2 clicks to do 1 click's worth of stuff, and it's just a little bit like all over the place and not ergonomic, and it's all valid criticisms, and I completely understand why everybody was so angry with that. If you watch Total Biscuit's What the Fuck Is This series, if you watch his when he checks out the games, he really, really didn't like the game and didn't like the aspects of all the looting and how homogenous it felt, and I don't think he's wrong. I think, you know, certain aspects of what he thinks I disagree with. Right, just then, that's important too, guys. Remember when I said I don't use the normal slashes too much? When I knock enemies down, I do. When you knock them down, they can't parry you, so you want to do as much damage to them as you can. Really, really powerful. But I can't disagree with a lot of those criticisms, because I think they're solid. The thing with me, though, guys, is the things I dislike the most are like the collision. You know, the collision and the hit detection. Those are the ones that bug me the most. I don't like it when something hits a huge hammer and it's 1.5 meters away from me and I'm dashing away from it and I get killed instantly. Those are the things that bug me, the mechanical stuff on the fundamentals of the game. Other than that, I absolutely adore it. I love the fundamentals. I think the shooting, minus the RNG nature of it, which I haven't spoke about, which you can see right here. Other than that, I think the shooting feels really satisfying. I think the sound design feels really satisfying. I don't like that there isn't an automatically pick things up. I think he should just pick shit up automatically instead of having to press buttons on it. I think that's just really stupid. And there is an ability you can upgrade, but it doesn't really make that much difference. It's kind of frustrating how that works. Like, for me, the visceral nature of the movement, the weapon diversity, and all the effects of shooting and the feeling of shooting and just the feeling of the combat, all of those fundamentals feel so great to me that I can look past all of that other stuff that is objectively true, you know? I kind of love that this game has tons of guns. guns you're probably never even going to see because some of them are really, really tricky to get and really, really rare. Like, I love the fact that the guns themselves aren't all that different from each other, so it means you can pick the one you like the look of rather than having to use the one you hate because it's the best. Stuff like that is really, really cool to me because it enables me to play the game the way I want to, and I really love about how you can get so strong in this game. And don't get me wrong, does it lead to, you know, setups that are unbeatable? Like, there are some setups where you can regenerate that Fury mode almost the second you come out of it and constantly be in slow motion doing 200% damage or whatever it is. And that's ridiculous because you can kill everything without it being able to move. You know, I'm sure there are other crazy setups. Like, there are some setups on the guns where you can make them refill their own ammo type, and you can make them do so much damage and have such a high chance of refilling their ammo that they're an unlimited gun. So you can just constantly DPS, and it makes them insanely damaging. Like, there's all kinds of super broken setups, but I love that. I love that you can get so broken. And some people think that it ruins the balance, it takes away from the fun, it makes everything else like seem pointless because it's so strong and why would you use anything else? But to me, I always think that's more of a shortcoming in the person's perspective than the game. Because you know when Darkside Phil says, "Oh, this game is easy. This game's too easy. You know, it's too easy." Why don't you put the difficulty up? Like, if you're complaining that the game is too easy, change the difficulty. I feel like it's so redundant, this notion that the game is too easy. If it's too easy, make it harder. What if you're on the hardest difficulty and it's too easy? Do a stipulation, do a restriction, make it harder. What do? Oh, turn healing off, stop healing. Limit your HP, limit your defense, take off your armor, use weaker guns. Like, there are so many ways that you can creatively make a game more interesting. If this is the edit, by the way, just then. So right here is after I died. And you'll notice it wants me to retrieve these notebooks. So this area is so densely populated by very strong people. You want to be careful. If you get a gaggle of wankers following you, you can get into a spot of just horrendous stuff, and there's nothing to be done. Because when there's so many enemies, and there's so many passive explosions, and you're getting so many status effects, and everything's kicking off, and the healing stations are far and few between, and you're not killing anything because your guns aren't good enough, and your weapons aren't strong enough, and you can't get the med packs to heal, like, this place put a real number on me. And look, just then, I get ambushed by a bunch of ambient, those chopper guys, which is not what you want, and I've barely got any ammunition. Like, this was at a point where I felt like the challenge was a little difficult because I didn't have an answer to a lot of these enemies. And it's interesting that I put the chainsaw on there because I want to talk about that. So, on my second campaign of No Pain No Gain, I got a DLC weapon or a pre-order weapon or something that I'd never used before, and it was a sword that was a chainsaw. I haven't googled to find out exactly what it is, but it's really good. So if you have got this game, guys, and you got that chainsaw sword at the beginning of the game, you want to put it on. My campaign, when I had that chainsaw sword, was so easy, because every time I did a sting, it killed almost everything I hit with it. It was so good against the bosses, it was so good against the enemies, and it has a biting mechanic, where as you hit with the sting, it starts serrating them and sawing them, and that saw damage is nuclear. Like, just then, if I'd have done it to him, he was dead. And I couldn't get over how good that weapon was, and I didn't know what it was because I didn't use it the first time through the game. And it turns out I think it's some kind of exclusive that not everybody gets. So I couldn't use it for this because I didn't want an advantage, but I'm telling you right now, if you want an easier time, guys, if you just want the achievement, you just want to beat the game, you don't care about Shadow Warrior, you're only playing it because it was free on, you know, Xbox Gold or something, that's the weapon you want to use. It is so strong. If I had it right now, I wouldn't be using anything else. Absolutely preposterously strong. But I love games that enable you to get really brokenly powerful because it doesn't ruin the enjoyment for me because I can choose not to do it. To me, it's a matter of self-control. Like, you can look at something like Final Fantasy VIII. Final Fantasy VIII is a pretty controversial Final Fantasy because some people don't like it, some people love it. You know, there's a wide spectrum of love and hate for that game. One of the areas of that game I really love is the Junctioning, because the Junctioning enables a learned player to do all kinds of interesting creative things early on to get a massive advantage. you can make your team unkillable on disc 1. And it's not difficult to do. It's very simple, really. There are so many ways to do it. You know, just off the top of my head, you can get Siren, can't you? And you can use one of her refine abilities that enables you to kill the T-Rex guys in the training center by blinding them and then killing them, or casting death, or whatever it is that you can do to put them down. And then when they die, they drop the dinosaur bones, and then when you refine the dinosaur bones, they refine into Quake. If you junction Quake into your HP, it gives you like 5,000 HP, and enemies are doing like 10 damage, so they will never kill you, ever, and you pretty much are immortal for the rest of the game. Like, you can refine the Quistis card and get a ludicrous item for that, which you can then transfer into magic, which you can put on HP and you'll probably never die. There's several ways of doing it, and they're really fun to discover and to develop and to work your own way, but you don't have to do it. If you don't want to get that crazy advantage, don't do it, you know? And it's wonderful when it's there, because when it's not there, games can suck. Like, right now, this is kind of a rough room, because every time I hit this guy, it feels like I'm trading with him. I'm not, but it gives the impression of that. And I pick up a med pack just then. This guy is immune to a ton of stuff as well. I'm using Vanish here. If you don't know what this move is, guys, when you go into Vanish, it increases your damage, and it means that the enemies can't see you. And I'm just going to use it, because it's the only tool I'm going to be using as far as that magic's concerned, to just get as much damage as I can. And if you ever see me look upwards just then, when I'm using the sting, it's because I can't see the reticle to see when it's filled because of the crazy colours going on. So if you're wondering why I did that, that's why. And then we clear out the rest of the enemies, we get some of the loot, and hopefully we can get some better drops. It must be said, guys, my drops were horrible on this campaign. I don't know why. I got a couple of the things that I liked. I didn't get a single weapon I liked, and I didn't get any of the setups I normally go for. I didn't get any of the strong setups at the beginning either. It took me so long to get the good setups, it was kind of frustrating. But yeah, when games don't have the ability to get really strong, they feel mundane to me, and it hurts my enjoyment of them, because I never feel like I'll ever get to a position that I want to be in. And I don't think you should have to get to max level and level every statistic to be strong. I think you should be able to do it creatively. And one of the areas of video games that I love the most is when I can make my character weaker, but I can make his offense stronger. Because my playstyle in almost everything is very glass cannon based. I don't want to have good defense. I don't want to have huge HP bars. I want to kill things really quickly, but I want to die fast too. I want the trade-off to be, all my offense comes at the price that if I get hit, I go down. And it's how I love playing, and it's a playstyle that I'll probably always adhere to now. And I didn't used to. You know, if you look back on some of my older walkthroughs when I started doing YouTube, I was upgrading my HP on those walkthroughs. I was not going the same way. I was obviously a fan of damage, because I think everyone's a fan of damage. It's kind of the go-to thing, isn't it? But I wasn't restricting myself in the ways that I am now. And it comes back to that idea of, if the games are too easy, make them harder. And a lot of people's counter-argument to that is it's not my job to make the game harder. And I always wonder when people use that argument, it's like, what do you want? Like, these people have made this game, they've put all these tools in it, they've put all these things inside of it, and it's now up to you to find your enjoyment. It's not the developer's job to make you enjoy their game. If you don't enjoy their game, maybe it's not for you. They've given you the tools, they've given you the environment, they've given you the landscape for that enjoyment. The enjoyment has to come from you. And if that means never using the most overpowered stuff and avoiding all the meta and all that nonsense, then that's how you find your enjoyment. How many people do you know that love fighting games but never pick top tier characters and hate people who do? Like, they'll never play those characters because they don't think it's playing the game, they think it's essentially cheating. And that mentality is in every type of game, you know? Yet when it comes to something like this, those people could potentially critique it for not having that balance, or not having that fun that they're looking for, even though you can make it yourself, and they have made it themselves when they play the games that they do like. It just seems so interesting to me. Anyhow, we get Like the Wind, which is one of my favourite abilities after we do the seepage problem. This mission, guys, very difficult. So, this is the mission where I get the enemy who messes me up. He is the first objective to get the gate key. You go to the gate is locked, you then have to open the gate by killing the Gatekeeper, and the Gatekeeper just happens to be this enemy that it's very difficult to attack him without trading. And he puts me down a whole bunch of times, and I have to get real creative on him as I get chased by a Talon. Fortunately, it doesn't have any resistances, which tells you that that's a fodder enemy. But it's over here. Do you see him? This icy guy on the right? I go into Vanish, and I'm going to pop the weapon on, charge the Sting, and then watch what happens. So this guy is fire vulnerable. I hit him with that, and then when I'm running away, he's going to teleport onto me and do damage. Because that's how this guy does. He goes invisible, and then he comes out bang next to you and starts jacking you up. And he didn't do it, which is wonderful, but he might do it now. There it was, just then. And I think he hit me. But this weapon that I've popped on, I've put fire on this element. Oh, that's a shame. It ruins your charge. You have to be careful of that. So I'm going to try and hit him with this. There he was just then. See that? Came out of the ground and did like a slash. It didn't connect fully. And just then, I do the Sting and I trade, and then I get ice on me, and the ice starts hitting me. Ticking away at my life and slowing my mobility. Boom. So, see that? That was a death, guys. That's how quickly death can happen. I did a Sting on him from Vanish. He wasn't attacking. And for whatever reason, I'm not entirely certain what happened myself. There was a few enemies around me. Somebody did something, and I got absolutely melted. So, I come back in on the spawn, and I get hyper aggressive on him now there's no enemies here, to try and put him down really quickly. And it skips that phase where he goes into the ground and makes all those dudes turn up, but I'm not having a good fight here because I don't have the damage for this. And then I get... Did you see what happened? I got jumping attacked by a Talon who was nowhere near me. But like I said, guys, some of the AoEs on those jumps, ridiculous. However, I did kill him. I killed the guy that we were trying to kill, so now I can come over here and pick up the key for the gate. And do you see how messy this is compared to what we were doing before? Like, this was that moment where it's like, Jesus Christ, I need to get some better stuff on these weapons. And I could have played it a lot better though. Admittedly, I played it sloppy as hell. But when I died, it pissed me off because I wanted to restart. This is about the time, I think, when I realised that I couldn't restart even the mission. Because I was hoping that maybe I'd done it wrong and I'd done a bit of Googling. Something hit me then. See the fire damage? Something hits me with fire, starts ticking away at my life. Very frustrating. What can you do though? But yeah, I get really tilted on this when I start dying because I don't want to have deaths in the video, but what can you do, you know? What can you do? This door was trolling me too. It wouldn't open, which wasn't really kind. But this whole mission was rough, guys. And I believe that this mission has... I think this has a boss. It's the boss who throws the bell who killed me. Oh, that was funny. So the boss on this area is this like orc-looking fellow who spins twice and throws a bell. I couldn't remember how many spins he did before he threw the bell, and he throws it pretty fast. And it one hit me. I don't think I had full HP, but it hit me once and I was dead. So yeah, I learnt that lesson pretty quickly. But there's going to be a bunch of these crazy-looking dudes that attack you there, that look like the Skags from Borderlands. I'm going to skip them. And then in here, there's going to be a big fight. This is a difficult fight, this one. Because there's no healing stations, and it's so claustrophobic, and this enemy type, they love to do this like Beyblade cartwheel move, and of course I did die, so this level was just all kinds of rough. And this was at the point when I realised just how ridiculous it would have been to do this challenge run without dying. And I feel like most of these scenarios, if I'd have come in with the equipment that I normally come in with, I would have been fine. The problem here is I just don't have it, and we have an improvement on the shotgun, which is good. I now have the charge shot, which I use a lot, and you'll notice I've got 2 double ups and a charge shot on the shotgun, which is one of the ways I like to run this particular setup. I just don't like using the Hauer. I normally use the triple barreled shotgun and the double barreled shotgun because I want to shoot once and then reload. I'm using the Hauer more so because it's cool and I wanted to speak about it, and because it's the only gun I've got at the moment. I don't think I have the sawn off yet. But the idea of the ability on that shotgun is those 2 double up ammos, what that ability does is it means that you shoot twice the amount of ammo to get a big damage increase. So Instead of 1 shell, you fire 2, and you get like 50% damage increase. And I have 2 of those on that gun. So it gets like 100% damage increase, but it fires, you know, triple what it should. And then with the charge shot, what it means is, instead of getting fully, you know, 6 full shells, I get to shoot once with a full charge, and the charge shot adds another 100% damage. So it's 200% normal damage of its base damage, hitting at once, and I'm going to be using it to be my massive input of DPS when everything else doesn't work, basically. And it's pretty effective. It's the way that I like to spec the shotgun. There's plenty of other ways to spec the shotgun, but that's the one that I use, and I like it a lot. There's a couple of setups that I really, really like in this game. The one that I was sad I couldn't show you was my nail gun. So there's a couple of nail guns in this game, and I really like them because they fire quite quickly and they have a decent ammo pool. So I usually double up on the ammo as much as I can, and then I give them a big damage boost, or if you can, a chance to have their ammunition refill. There's a nail gun that has that on it by default, which is really, really useful. But what it does is, it makes the nail gun shoot less, because you can only shoot, you know, for instance, if it has a 30 clip, you might only be able to shoot 15, but it shoots quick, and it might have a chance to refill its clip so you can shoot even more, but when it hits way harder than it was intended to hit with the nail gun. And I use it non-elementally so that I can have it to do damage to people who are really resistant. It's really good against one of the final bosses, because he's the one where you have to take off all your elements. The whole point of him is to shoot him normally and hit him normally. But I would have loved to have showed you that setup with the nail gun, because it's really fun. And you feel strong. Like, when an enemy gets close to you and you put that on, you know he's going to die, because it shreds. It does so much damage. The only problem with it is you run out of ammo really quickly, and you spend a lot of time reloading unless you get those happy procs that fill it back up. And then another one that I really like, because I love the swords and everything, and the swords are the most powerful things in the games, but I like the guns the most. And you can get a 1911, which looks really, really nice, and there's an explosive setup that I really like with that, where I get a bunch of explosives on it, and then sometimes I run a kimbo, if you can run a kimbo, and might be misremembering that, or I'll run something else. Fundamentally, it's the pistol with a kimbo on it, and then when you're in the levels that have lots of ambient explosives, you know, like the area that's the city streets on the first side mission that you do, with the long time no set me up, my favourite line in this game. When you're on those streets fighting tons of enemies, when you shoot once, you'll hit the enemy and you'll set off all the ambient explosives, and it'll just do so much damage. And you can get rid of people by just using splash damage. It's really, really cool. And then the last thing that I like to do as far as setups goes is I like to make the light machine gun do as much damage as it can, with like doubling up on ammo and everything, and then trying to give it the chance to refill its own ammunition, because that gun can do some serious damage when it gets going. And I really like the idea of just doing a lot of damage. But here is the elite belly. He doesn't really have much for you at a distance. The bell throw, that will hit incredibly strong, but just wait and then dash accordingly. I do like how you can see the damage that you're doing to this boss. You can see the chunks of meat coming off his body, and I really appreciate that he's a boss that's designed with evasion in mind, and it works really well. The female boss in this game, who is like a pair of legs, there's some really interesting bullet hell aspects of her design, but some of the things you have to dodge, if you get put in a bad pattern, I don't really know how you're meant to dodge them, because there are times when like you can't move fast enough to reposition to get into the right area to dodge the thing, and it makes me wonder how the fuck you were meant to do it. Because I love bullet hell elements in first-person shooters. I think the idea of dodging projectiles is really cool, and something that not enough first-person shooters do. I love it, I really do, and if I were to make a game, it would have that in it if it was a first-person shooter. This game does a little bit of that, and when it does, it's always good. The problem with it is, it doesn't do enough of it, and it does more shit like what you just saw then, where that guy fires a bunch of electricity and it's very difficult to get away from. It's also a passive, so it lasts quite a long time. But just loot the arena after you've killed the boss, get as much stuff as you can, and I'm going to talk now about the ambient explosives that are dotted around, which are actually one of the best parts of the game.
I'll be right there. We have to get back there now.
So as you might have noticed when you've been watching this, littered around the world there are coloured objects. It can be the bulbs of exotic looking plants, it can be some strange looking cairns and urns and pots, it can be barrels, it can be a whole host of different assets in the world. Depending on what world you're in, depends on what the assets are. And each of the colours corresponds with the status effects as we begin Big Trouble in Calamity. This is a tricky level, but I managed to get this one no death, I believe, which I'm really, really happy about. I also equipped that weapon that you just saw me pop on there, which is a projectile, steam-powered, like, stake gun. I love how this gun looks. I hate how it plays. I can't get this gun to be fun and good. I just can't. But I wanted to use it for the diversity because I think it looks superb. It looks like a zombie pack-a-punch, like, wonder weapon, which I really appreciate. I love the creativity on some of the weapons in this game. But projectile guns, nah. They're not for me when it involves high mobility. High mobility and projectile just don't go together. Unless it's Titanfall 2 and that's the exception, that's not the rule. But we've got a couple of the Hercules guys, or the Herculeans, or Herculons. And then we've got a couple of the standard Zilla guys, so I'm just going to use everything I can to take them down, and I'm going to continue talking about the explosives in the world. So each of the pots correlates to a different element, and the status effects are as following. Green is corrosion, which this guy is. He's a corroded enemy just then. I have corrosion on this weapon that I nearly popped on then. The weapon wheel's a little bit of a pain in the ass too. When you try and put it on certain diagonals, the amount of times you put the wrong thing on happens a lot, and I don't think it's just me. There's probably a decent amount of it's me, but I feel like the weapon wheel is just a little bit not as responsive and as accurate as it could have been, because I find myself fighting with it a lot. I actually swore and shouted out loud while recording, because of the weapon wheel was being a dick, and it kept putting on the wrong weapons, and I was getting really angry. But green is corrosion, does corrosive damage. The blue is frost and ice, does ice damage. The yellow is, of course, lightning, does the static and the shock damage. And then the red is fire. Pretty simple stuff. And this level doesn't seem to have too much of it, so I can't really give it as a good example. Luckily, I love this environment, this highway, because it enables me to do lots of movement, lots of evasion to take on these guys, and these guys are firing projectile weapons at me, which is really nice. It's fast projectile, but I can dodge them if I'm good enough and if I'm alert enough, and I'm just going to use advanced movement to stay in the pocket and take them on. I wish I could showcase more of the guns, guys, but it just didn't end up happening, which is unfortunate, but what can you do? Like, this revolver is good, but it's too slow, man. Especially when you get used to the other ones. There are some other pistols, but the one I wanted I didn't get. And I've done 3 campaigns and I've only got it once, which goes to show just how cruel the game can be considering how nice the guns are. And some of the guns in the shop are really cool too, but they're super expensive, and there's no planet where you're going to get that kind of money, especially when you should be spending it on the abilities that he sells, because the augments that you can put on the weapons are probably better than the weapon pre-types, if you ask me. Also, you get to watch me fail at jumping across this chasm because the mantle fucked me. I'm like, what is he doing? There are rare moments where, like, the jumping and the mantling doesn't detect really well. For the most, it's pretty good. You never normally have any issues. But this particular one, I just could not get him to grab the ledge. And then I forgot how to jump. It was rather embarrassing. But we've added a grenade launcher to our ensemble. And the grenade launcher is really good, outside of the fact that because this game has a random nature to the spread of the bullet, it can sometimes not fire where you're aiming, and sometimes not trigger because it's based on context. It has to hit them. It has to be contact, sorry. So sometimes it's better to just dump them on the floor near them and hope it goes off than direct impact them, unless you get one of the grenade launchers where you can shoot and it will detonate. The explosives in this game between the grenade launchers and the rocket launchers are very strong and very good. There's a rocket launcher you get at the end of the game where you can essentially just shoot it at the floor and you'll do more damage than you can do with almost any other weapon. It's really, really good. And if you spec to it and make it even better, it probably gets preposterous. But I'm not a big fan of using explosives like that, so it's not something I've ever experimented with, but I recommend that you do, because it's just super good. But let's talk about the accuracy stacks. I've not mentioned it, and it's important. So when you put upgrades on your characters, you'll notice that some of them will put the miss rate up to a large penalty. For instance, there's a lot like 80% crit rate bonus, 100% damage bonus or something ridiculous like that, and then it'll be 250% miss rate. So your missing will now be 250% more than it was before, and with certain weapons it can make them unusable. There's a segment at the end of the game where I put rapid fire on this revolver to see what it does, and it makes the miss rate really high, and I fire at a guy and I have the dot on him and it doesn't hit him. And I can't stand that. That's the one aspect of the shooting in this game that I hate. Because it is RPG and stat based, when you put the dot on people, sometimes you will miss, and it's nothing to do with you. And I do not think that has any place in any first-person shooter. It reminds me of Baldur's Gate, where you used to whack on people, and you're whacking them, you see your guy whack them, you hear the whack noise, and it goes, miss. Like, is there anything more fucking stupid than watching a dude hit a dude and hearing the hit, and then saying miss? I never liked that. Always hated it, and I hate it even more when it's in shooters. And this game has it. Luckily, you don't really come across it too often because of the sheer amount of output of the damage that you're doing. So a lot of the pistols fire so quickly, even if you do get a random spread and miss, you'll not notice it. If you're using it on the SMGs, so much firepower, it's not really noticeable. But on certain guns like the slow-firing revolvers, on the grenades, like I fire a rocket at the second to last boss, and it looks like it goes through his body. It's just weird. Like I don't even know what was going on, but something happened. And it happens quite a lot. It's just one of those things. Fortunately, it's not that big of a deal, because there's only certain upgrades that do it, and I try to avoid them as best as I can. And fundamentally, if you can put your dot on people, you can kill them. A lot of the times, it's just me having horrible aim, as we take on this guy, who has a lot of status effects, and he's just tough as nails, and he's hitting me with everything here, because my dodges are bad. Like, look at him, he's hardened, power's immune, toxic immune, physically resist. He has no weakness. Guy's just a beast. But look at the range. See that? Guy's whipping my ass. There we go. Put him down. He's meant to, though. He's meant to be like a bit of a mini-boss, a bit of a tough dude. And he drops a med pack, which is cool. But you'll notice as well, on top of my HP bar, you can see there's now an ability for C and an ability for X. Those are the new moves that you can use that I'm not going to be using as part of the challenge run. But they can be really, really good. There are a lot of interesting setups you can do with them to make your life easier, and the only reason I'm not using them is because I kind of want to, you know, make it a little bit more difficult, make it a bit more interesting. And got a couple of Zilla soldiers up here teleporting forward and hitting me with swords. Fortunately, the frost on my SMG is going to help me out, and then here we go with the weird movement. This is known as the Skyrim mountain climbing. So if you spam jump against a wall like that, you will get a little bit of upwards momentum, and you can use it to save yourself when you fall off. I think it's a brilliant touch. I think the only way it could be better is if you could actually wall jump. And I'd love to see that if they ever make another Shadow Warrior. The ability to wall run added to this game would be absolutely superb. Kicking off the walls and just acrobatics, it could be super sick. The problem with that is, I feel like the reception on Shadow Warrior 2 was nowhere near what they wanted or what they deserved, because there's a lot of negativity around this game. And I'm not going to say it's not deserved, because some of it's deserved, but I still think there's a really fun game in here, and I think it's worth your time. I really do. I'm getting trolled right now. Terrible aim. Anyhow. Pushing onwards, pop the shotgun back on, couple of shells in there. The ability cards that I'm using at the moment, the ones I'm going to be upgrading, at the end of the run I'm going to show you all my cards so you can imitate the build if you want to. I'm going to give you an idea of what I upgraded. Fundamentally it's the simple stuff. I made sure to max Vanish. I made sure to get like a couple of the ammo ones for increased ammunition. I made sure to max Sting, because I think it's the most effective move in the game. I put a couple points into the Fury mode, but I didn't max it out. I put as many points as I could into the movement, but I didn't max it out. I think the final movement bonus is like 10 points, and in the end I just didn't have the patience to save up for it. It would have helped though, because it's very, very good. I also put as many points as I could into lowering the enemy's elemental weakness, because elements are so strong in this game, you really want to do it. And I picked up all of the elemental additional damage cards from the shop and put a point in each one of those. Other than that, I didn't do anything too crazy. You know, you can kind of do... Oh, I missed with a Sting then. That's quite rare to see that. As we take him out with my 31 HP and accidentally do a spinning attack by accident. Happens sometimes. But we're rocking on 195,000 money at the moment, which is enough to buy a couple of decent upgrades from the shop. I'm probably going to buy a big crit, like 130% crit bonus, and potentially a charge shot or a double up on ammunition, because those are the ones I want. I'm going to try and go for the ones that can give me some big damage and help me out, hopefully. But keep on moving up the mountain. This is the probably the trickiest fight in this segment outside of the boss that's coming up, because there's a lot of really tough things here. There are those drones that float around. The mother brain one, I forget the name of it. It's the alpha of the set of them, and it's a bit of a nightmare because it's very resilient. Usually the drones are quite popcorny, and you can just put them down and shoot them a little bit. But because I am underleveled and because my weapons don't have the shit that they need on them, it means that I have to get a little bit more creative with Vanish and stings and stuff, and enemies that would go down quite quickly and you would be able to just play the game quite naturally with, I'm going to have to play it in a bit more of a bitchified way, which is unfortunate. Because usually you could just jump around wrecking everybody, but I just don't have the damage to guarantee that I can survive it. And that's the two real tools for survivability in this game. It's your mobility and your damage output. If you can kill the things quickly and you can get to them quickly, there's no reason not to decimate most of the hordes before the fights even got started. This is the mother drone, by the way. This is look how much it takes. Like, it's going to be 4 full stings to put it down, which is kind of crazy. But what can you do? I don't have too much ammunition right now as well, which is unfortunate. I don't have any of the upgrades I want on the revolver, but the revolver's still going to do decent damage because it's my standard damage weapon. As we charge another sting and we move back towards here. There is also a key statue here that we should be using to replenish our Vanish and to use that as much as I can. That particular enemy, did that say vulnerable to ice? I should be using my SMG, and I probably tried to put it on just them, but the weapon wheel screwed me a little bit. Yeah, that's much better. Well, music's superb in this game as well. You might be hearing a little bit of it in the background. It really gets you pumped. I love the menu theme as well, the chuggy menu theme. It's also got some nice homage throwbacks to some 80s power ballads, because at the beginning of the game there is a power ballad, and then at the end of the game there is one too, which is really nice. It's bookended by power ballads because it's very stupid. And the game itself has a really silly sense of humour. Lots of the humour is like so bad it's almost good. A lot of it doesn't land very well, but every so often there's stuff that lands, and I can appreciate it. There's a decent amount of referencing and movie quotes and the like. It's just generally innuendo and pretty stupid. I appreciate it though. I definitely enjoy that. There are also these trials that they've added as DLC, which when I first played the game they didn't exist. And you can go into them and get some new bonuses and some new benefits which I've not experimented with. And they get you something known as Masamune orbs, but because I didn't really know what it was and I didn't know if everybody had it, I'm not going to be messing with it. On my second campaign though, I did play through one of them, and it was on no pain no gain, and I got my ass kicked. So they seem very difficult. One of them had like pitfalls that if you fell in, you failed the mission, and there was a ton of enemies, and I don't feel like I had the right levels for it. I think I'd taken it on a little bit too early. But it was definitely incredibly difficult. But it wasn't fun, which was kind of a problem, you know? Like, usually when you go into something like that, you're hoping it's going to be a nice burst of gameplay and you can enjoy it and you can use it to maybe play it when you don't have enough time to do some, you know, fully established campaign. I feel like this encounter right now is a good example of what this game is like when you do this challenge run. Like, a lot of the encounters that would be over quite quickly, they linger a little bit. And the boss fight coming up, the boss fights especially, the boss fights lingers way too long. And the problem with a lingering boss fight is you have to dodge more of it. The good thing is, it teaches you how to dodge the boss, so you'll become much better at fighting them, but it just gets a bit tedious when you're doing so little damage. You just seem to be doing the dance repeatedly. And it's definitely not showcasing the game in its best light, but it's just how the game works when you limit yourself in such a way. But I'm going to be using Vanish here to skip this sequence, because there's a bunch of enemies in here. We're trying to do it low level, so we can't kill everybody, because leveling up is kind of the enemy at the moment, even though leveling up would definitely help, because it makes a huge difference. The biggest difference would just be farming the enemies and getting the drops so I could put good things on the weapons. If you can get lucky with your drops and put some cool things on the weapons, you don't really need the levels, because you can make things so strong that the levels themselves are inconsequential. Problem with that is you have to do the side missions. Like, the side missions are some of the best ones for it. But back into the hub world. This is actually the first time you've seen it on my walkthrough, because I've been editing it out. But every time I do a mission, guys, when you teleport back, you come to this location and you can run around and talk to NPCs and buy things from shops and get new missions and side missions and bounty boards. There's a whole host of things and activities you can do here, which is quite interesting. As we get the King Skeletor, which is our first light machine gun, which looks absolutely superb. It looks like something out of Warhammer 40k, though. It's definitely kind of strange looking. And we've just unlocked Shadow Fury, which is the second of the abilities we're going to be using. However, I'm not going to be using it very well because I seem to fuck up every time I activate it. Shadow Fury, once you upgrade it, it makes the game run in slow motion and it makes your damage do a large amount of damage. When you activate it, you want to put on the most damage that you've got and kick some ass. However, I never generally do that and I always fuck it up. But here is Corrupted Kamiko. This is the hardest boss in the game. You'll notice I had a horrible start. At the very beginning, I got hit by that rotating wall, and it does a lot of damage. And previously in the walkthrough, I mentioned that this boss had certain setups that makes me question how you're meant to dodge them. And it's that move you just saw me dodge twice. When she puts up those spectral walls, and then they blast towards you, there are times when she puts them up, like then. See that? She put them up, I saw it, I reacted, I dodged, but I couldn't get out of the way of it. Like, what was I meant to do then, guys, outside of maybe double jumping? And even then, the double jump I don't think is high enough to dodge that. Like, I'm really curious when it comes to some of those setups, because there are moments when she sets you up. She sets you up in these moments where even if you react and even if you dodge, you can't get out of it. And because the dodge doesn't seem to have iframes, you can't dodge through it. And if you can dodge through it, I apologise, I don't think I've ever tried, but I'm almost certain you can't. Like, this manoeuvre is completely fair. She does this, it rotates, you can use this as an opportunity to hit the hell out of her. This manoeuvre, when it's spaced correctly, is fine. But when you get that weird spacing and you can't dodge it, it just makes me wonder what they expected us to do. If there was, maybe you can parry it, that could be sick maybe. Dangerous to try though. And the best way to do this boss is to use, like just then! Like, how the fuck do you dodge that? And I've killed this boss a few times and I just kind of think that there's certain moments where you just eat a shot and it's not really designed for dodging in mind. Like, one of the cool things about bullet hell usually is that all the patterns have a way to be dodged, and I'm hoping that this game is more elegant than just having a move that's fucking trash like that. Like this. This is two rotating beams, one is high, one is low. You jump over one, you go under the other, and while you're doing this you have to kill a bunch of enemies, which is kind of a pain in the ass because these superior Thorntails actually take a bit of a beating because we're so weak. Luckily, this boss has a lot of generous checkpoints. If this boss did not have those generous checkpoints, this would be an absolute nightmare, but it does. So I have a checkpoint now, so if I die, I'll be perfectly fine. But the best way to do this fight is to use Sting. Sting on your most powerful melee weapon. It does a nuclear amount of damage on her legs. I wanted to use the guns though, because I've never killed this boss just by shooting it. And if you have that chainsaw sword, you can kill this boss really quickly, because it does so much damage. Ridiculous amounts of damage. But alas, you know, the spirit of this is to make it a bit more exciting, a bit more dangerous, a bit different, so we'll use the guns even though we don't really have them in the way we want them to be. These enemies are very, very dangerous too. They've got some interesting techniques of ground spikes and barreling their way towards you, and especially when you combine this environmental hazard. This is a dangerous sequence, but it's a fun sequence too. If we had a little bit more damage, this would be absolutely fine. But as it stands, I pretty much get my ass kicked. And it happens, you know. It's one of those things. And this boss room does have a regenerating health, but I wasn't able to get to it in time, so instead I ended up dying. But you'll notice what happens when you die is it saves your progress on the enemies that you've killed. So I can't even make this a clean transition of me killing them all, which is one of the things I really dislike about the checkpoint system in this game. I don't like this kind of checkpoint system personally. I feel like it diminishes the value of what we're trying to do, because it means that all challenge is basically grindable. You can just bang your head against it and get it eventually. You don't have to rise to the occasion and have a good run. You just kind of kill one and then that's one less to worry about. Die again, die a million times, you know? And I don't like that. Anyhow, we have the next phase of the fight. So she's going to jump now, and when she jumps, it's going to release these undulating, crazy spikes that move out in a concentric pattern away from the boss. And you just want to jump over those or dash between the gaps. And then when she jumps and she does this, she's going to land on where you are. And when she lands on where you are, if that touches you, it does a lot of damage. And then she'll also do that move that sometimes can be very difficult to dodge. And it's just a case of watching what she does, hitting her, dodging away from her moves. Like that move just then with the fireballs, all you need to do is constantly be dodging it to the side and it won't hit you ever. And then just be careful of the spikes that come out of the ground, because sometimes they can spawn on top of you. And we get to see the wonderful light machine gun here that just looks absolutely monstrous. Such a crazy looking gun. And then we just chip away at her for the next 20 minutes thanks to our pitiful damage. As I was saying though, I've got piercing mods on this gun as well, and I really don't recommend them because there's nothing to pierce through and hit. Unless you're in the main missions and stuff. In the side missions it might be a bit better then. But there's the HP. Go to the threshold, get that respawn. Here she comes. Boom. And it's nice that that statue gives you health regen for a decent amount of time. Dash to the side to get around that one. Keep on hitting her. Lots of chip damage here. She jumps on where we are. We go towards where she was. She does the barricade that comes away. We jump over. And the cool thing about this, even though it takes a long time and it might not be the most fun thing to watch, is that each of these patterns that she's doing is important to understand how to avoid it. Because you're going to fight this boss like 2 more times. And she's going to do the same shit. So it's really, really handy knowing what's happening. Oh, that's what I was going to say, sorry. The Fury mode. When you activate Fury, ideally you want to use your most powerful weapon inside of it to get the most benefit. So for me that would be charging the shotgun, using the sting on my better weapons, you know, doing things like that, using the light machine gun to get that nice damage boost. I never do that though, because it just always falls apart for some reason. You're going to see it all the way through the campaign. Every time I activate that mode, it's never really as it should be. But I imagine if you do it right, it's really good. For instance, when a boss becomes vulnerable, if a boss gets vulnerable and you can hammer on them, activate that mode and then use that nail gun setup that I love so much, I imagine the damage on that would be absolutely monstrous. Like, I wonder if you can activate the Fury, then activate the Vanish mode, and then do a Sting with the double damage and the Fury bonus and see what that would do, because that would be adding the 2 multipliers together. I don't know if that works, but it'd be cool if it does. You'll also notice when you get close to this boss, she'll try to stamp on you, and you can use this to your advantage by baiting the stomp and then hitting her a bunch. The problem with it is, if she does the barricade move, she can spawn the barricade in your body, and it'll just do nuclear damage. And then the second bad thing is, the stomp has horrible detection, so there's times when she'll stomp, you'll be nowhere near it, and you'll take like 50 damage. So sometimes it doesn't feel like it's worth it, but here we go. I use my sexy mode and I start shooting with the SMG. Not the worst damage in the world in the grand scheme of things. And then I try to charge the shotgun, but the shotgun has to reload, which is really, really depressing, and I don't get a chance to use it. See what I mean when I say everything goes wrong when I use that mode? I should have put the light machine gun on and just hit her with that, but hindsight and everything. I do like this boss. I just feel like that one barricade setup she has feels a little bit shitty, and I feel like that the second checkpoint should not save the kills of the enemies. I feel like you should do the entire enemy phase on one life, because I think that it diminishes the point of the whole thing. And if you're watching this and thinking, wow, she's tanky, she's got way too much HP, that's not the case at all, guys. That's me. I don't have the damage I should have when I'm here. That's all it is. When you get here, you'll be able to do way more than her. Than me, sorry, on her. It's just one of those things. And even now, using this light machine gun, it's doing a decent chunk. Because it's, you know, it's a boss. It's meant to be tanky. It's meant to kick my ass. That's what it's all about. And the healing stations give you 100 health, and luckily I only have 100 health, so it works perfect for me. But I wonder if you can jump over that. Maybe it's better than the dash. I feel like it's so quick though, it'll probably still hit you. Right, there's a lot of things that I'd like to tweak in this game. See, just then, I feel like maybe I could have jumped over that, but I'm getting put into some really bad situations. It's weird with the crit on this boss too. There's times when you can hit for more damage, and I feel like shooting the woman is the best thing to do, but then there's times when you shoot the legs and you do more damage. And I don't know if it's just the passive crit that's ticking on the gun, or if it's just one of those things. But it's not a difficult boss, really. It's just hard because she can kill you so easily. But it's pretty good for teaching you mobility, it's good for teaching you to jump, and there's some cool ideas here. And there we go. She goes down. And now we have to travel to Shadow Hills to talk to Amiona through her portal, which is going to be one of the many twists that happens in the plot here. But make sure you pick up all the loot. Do you see these wonderful looking swans and peacocks and all kinds of different animals that are multicoloured? These are all the items that you put onto your weapons to give them all kinds of properties. And if you look in that menu, there are hundreds of them. Absolutely hundreds of them. Different rarities, different features. It's kind of crazy. The flexibility and the sheer breadth of stuff you can do with the guns is really superb. There's a lot of attention to detail to it. It's just a shame that it all gets swallowed in an interface that can't really handle it. And then here we go, Ancestral Ties. We get the Spring Chester. Oh, it's warning me that this level is too hard for me too. And if this is the one I think it is, Ancestral Ties is a very difficult mission. So I believe that this is the one with the estate, the Yakuza estate. And the reason that this is tricky coming up is purely because there are not any healing stations in the main building. And to get to them you have to leave the building, and to do that you have to go on a massive adventure that I really didn't want to do. If I'd have known that it was this mission coming up, and that there weren't that many of the healing stations, I would have probably not used my Fury on the roof on one person. Because this next sequence, I love this segment and I love this part of the level, but it has to be said, it's really, really challenging trying not to get hit in cramped, closed environments against so many enemies, so aggressive, with no real guaranteed way of healing. But if you climb up this ladder, there's going to be one girl, oh well, 2 or 3 girls, sorry, at the top of here, and then one girl at the top of this ladder, who looks a little bit like Deadpool. But I'm going to use my Fury here because I thought more people were going to follow. And it's a really terrible idea. Because it just wastes it and then I don't have an advantage. I thought I was going to die though. So that's the reason I used it. You'll notice the Fury knocks her down and then I can just dick her. And then when you come over here, if you shoot the window, you'll fall down into where the cutscene trigger is. And then this is when things get really crazy. So you're now going to get attacked by the entire estate. And these people are very durable. I do not have the damage that I need to be convincing here, so this is going to get really sketchy. There are 3 levels on this game where I felt weak as piss, and this section was one of them, even though Sting really helped me. Because look at that, it's so strong. Vanish and Sting together, even with this deficit in my damage, I can still do a lot. But one of them was the level with where trying to get the Gatekeeper's key. Dying against him was really, really frustrating. And then the other one is coming up later on, which is the hardest level in the game, which I think is called Stopping the Ooze. It's just very difficult, and I died a whole bunch. Some stuff was deserved, some stuff was just kind of questionable. But this look at the map. Look how many people I have to kill here with no healing station in this building. It was bad news bears to begin with. But it's a really fun encounter because what you haven't really been able to see from my footage, guys, is just how destructible a lot of the environments are. And when I say destructible, it's the items within the environments, not the environments themselves. But you can break almost everything, and it slices and dices and crumbles and breaks, and it just looks really good. And I can't get past this girl. I'm trying to run past her, but she's cock-blocking the fucking door, which was a pain in the ass. There's a Chi statue to my right just then, which would definitely help when it comes to using the Vanish. But at this moment, I'm just trying to assess the layout of the area, because I can't remember how it all syncs together. You know, I've beaten this game a decent amount of times, but, you know, I've not really committed to memory all these different places. But there's the Chi. There's a medkit. That was really handy. If I could have got a little bit luckier with the medkits, I might have been able to make this work. She's vulnerable to electric, which is fucking ironic considering she's immune to toxic, and that was the one weapon I put on. That one's vulnerable to toxic. Where was she when I needed her? Look at this though. Shreds my HP, puts lightning on me. The status effects when you get them are a pain in the ass because they stop your mobility, they slow you down, they limit your distance in your dodge. Some of them just tick passive damage, which is the worst as well. The status effects themselves are one of those things I wish I could remove, because I just don't think they add to anything fun. And sometimes you trade with enemies that don't touch you and they give you instant status effects, and it just doesn't flow. But I understand why they exist, because you're so mobile. You're so mobile, you're so lethal, and if you upgrade the right things and if you get the right tools, you're very difficult to kill. Like, watching me play this is made Wang look very vulnerable. It's made him look incredibly vulnerable as I get killed just then, and that's where it puts me. Unfortunately, I can't, as I've mentioned, if you've just jumped onto the video and you're randomly an hour into it, I can't edit this in such a fashion where it looks like I haven't died and it's one continuous piece, because in this game the checkpoints are shit, to say the least. They're handy for the person that doesn't want to overcome adversity, but they're not handy for the person that does. But we'll make do with what we've got, use as much mobility as I can, charge the shotgun. Like that, if I had the right stuff on this gun, that was death just then. She wouldn't have survived that. But I just don't. The particular upgrades I have don't have the right metrics yet. And it comes with time and grinding. And there was no grinding done in this run. The playtime at the end I think was 4 hours and 30 minutes, something like that. It was under 5 hours for the full campaign, which is not really an indicator of, you know, the true quality of the game or the length, because there's a lot of stuff I didn't do. But there's another death, guys. Just got my ass whooped. That was an example of me trying to use the standard slashes and the guy just parried it and kicked me in the face. This is one of the reasons why Sting is so incredibly useful. But again, if you come here with the right setups, one Sting would be enough to pretty much kill these people. But if you're low level and you're not farming and doing side missions, you ain't coming with the right gear, guaranteed. Like if you use a cheat engine and you use like transfer of the file information to give you the best upgrades in the game, then you could come here with some cool shit. But I don't even know if you can do that, and doing that is usually quite tricky to figure out, because you have to find the right codes for the right items and copy them in and swap them over, and I don't know how viable that would be. But other than that, you know, you're gonna have to really grit your teeth and commit to the attrition. That was a nice hit. That guy went down how everybody should be going down. She didn't though. She took a massive beating just then. He went down really quickly, which is nice. And then I'm just getting hit scanned to fuck. I'm almost certain that pistol she's got's hit scan, because it's really hard to dodge. That's the people you need to take out. If you see anybody that's shooting and you don't see the projectile, you need to kill them, because they're so dangerous. That's the difference between projectile and hit scan. Projectile can be dodged all day, hit scan cannot. Like, you can try, but it just doesn't happen. But here we go, what have we got? Carnivorous Soul of Haste. That probably helps on your movement speed. And another lady coming for me. But you see what I mean when I said I should have saved the Fury mode? I got one kill. I could have put such a dent in these people, it would have been fine. But it's just not how that went. Another thing to bear in mind, guys, is you can actually hit people through walls with some of the moves in this game. So if you know there's somebody on the other side of a wall, just go for it. Chances are the collision on the hit detection will probably work. You're actually going to see some instances of me doing it on this very video. Shooting through roofs and all kinds of things. It's pretty crazy. That's one aspect of video games I wish they'd elaborate on more. I love the idea of bullet penetration. I'm not the biggest fan of it when the enemy does it to you, of course. But when it comes to the player, getting creative and being able to shoot through walls and doors is just really cool. It feels cool, you know. Ooh, we got a weapon drop as well. Crim swords. That is a dual sword. And right now, I can hear a lot of shooting, but I can't see any shooting. And there's a guy behind me. Shooting what sounds like an Uzi. And he's through this wall just here. Through this door. Do you see them? Luckily for me, because of Vanish, it shows me his outline through the wall. So it gives me an idea of where he is. Unfortunately, you can't seem to turn Vanish off when you activate it by accident. And there you go, see that? Dirty, but it works. You can actually slash through this wall as well with the energy of this weapon. For some reason they decided not to make the collision stop it on some of these walls. I'm not entirely certain why. But it's such a beautiful game too. There's a really, really nice eye for colour in this game. A lot of first-person shooters these days are really drab and monotone and fucking everything's super serious. There's a secret up there. That gets you some money if you pick them up. There's tons of those, but I don't really see the point in picking them up outside of if you're going for the collectibles. And I don't know where all of them are, so there's no real point in going for them and making an effort if you don't know where every single one is. But here is a moment where I should be using the waypoint system on the map, which I think the dot system is absolutely brilliant. I love the idea of it, because you don't have to use it. If you want to explore and find like all the objectives yourself and feel like you achieved something, you can do that. If you're lost and you want to know where to go, you look at that map, you see those dots, you follow those dots, you'll find your way. But look at this! I'm hitting him through the goddamn walls. I have no idea why. Really funny. I don't know if the game glitched on me right now and put those people through the wall, or if it was just an unfortunate path that they took, an interesting pathing. But once they were killed, the waypoint updated to being beneath me, and now I can go and get to the vault, which is the reason we came here to begin with. The good old vault. But the kitchens, just a lot of the environmental design. I really like the places where you fight in this game, and there's just some really nice touches. The chests are a bit awkward to see. I feel like the chests should pop out a lot more than they do. A lot of the times the only way I can tell there's a chest is by using the map. The map becomes really, really useful. And I like a good useful map. I just wish it was on the left hand side, and I wish you could just flip it instead of having to toggle to that huge one, which I really don't want to use. But do you see that, guys? That was a healing station outside. If I'd have wanted to do this building without dying and took it really seriously, there's also a healing station just here. This entire level has healing stations on like compass points, but they're all outside. And I didn't want to run outside and spend the whole time running back inside just to get the no death, because in my opinion that's fucking boring. They should have put one in the building. If there was one in the building and it had a decent regen rate, I think it would have been completely manageable and I would have been able to make it work. But as it stood, I ended up dying a decent amount, because look how many there are outside. Tons of them. You just have to go through the goddamn labyrinthine building to get to them, and it's just not worth it. But if you're playing, you probably got a whole bunch of health and healing flame, and you might not have even needed them. Maybe your weapons are so strong you could just take them out. But there's the explosives. Now we can detonate the vault and then get in there. And then there's a cutscene of this one killing herself. And then once she's dead, you can pick up the knife. And then we can get out of dodge. So the ceremonial dagger. Boom, son. Now I can bring that ceremonial dagger to somebody else. And now we get to do body shaking, which I believe is another boss fight against Kamiko. This boss fight, though, I think is better, because you're in a much bigger environment, and she's got some alternative things that she does, which makes her a little bit more interesting. But here are some ambient, huge dudes in the area that are all on fire, and you can skip this entire sequence. Do you notice how that's a big red skull on him, on the radar? That means that he's a tough dude, but if you kill him, you'll probably get something good. And you could kill him, because there's decent environment here to play hide-and-go-seek and fuck everybody up. But I wanted to get through this in quite an expedient fashion, hence the low level. And the more people you kill, the more you level up. So I wanted to kill this guy just to see what the damage was like, and the hellhounds go down pretty quickly. And then I trigger the Fury just to see what the normal damage was like in this. And I think the aesthetic of this looks really interesting. It kind of reminds me of DMC's Devil Trigger. There you go. Shadow Fury is pretty strong. And I don't even have it upgraded all that much yet. When you upgrade that, it just gets so strong. And I love it. I love being powerful. There's a checkpoint. There's a chest. There's a fortune cookie. And now we can push forward onwards. And we've got another encounter that can either be done or skipped. And I'm going to skip it. So going to Vanish mode. Cruise past the healing station. That guy there is a unique variant on the belly guy, I think. You don't see many of those. But if you drop down here, you can get back into the palace. And you can have an easy life. Some of these characters that we're meeting, if you've played the first Shadow Warrior, you'll probably recognise them. I don't know the full story of the first game. I played a little bit of it, but I didn't like how it felt. Unfortunately, I played it after this, and the thing I love about this game is its movement, and the movement in the first game is not even close. It's just a kernel of the idea that this game became, and it seems like a really cool game and a really fun game, but I'm such a stickler for shit like that it's enough to make me not want to play it. So, unfortunately, my knowledge of Shadow Warrior 1 is not very good. There we go, look at all that money. All that zilly, or whatever they call it. Zillionaire, I think it is. Zillion, something like that. It's those symbols that people get for drum sets. But here we go, Devouring Kamiko. So, this is interesting because she has a whole host of moves now where she releases those spikes, and she has a whole host of jumps that she can do with them. And then she has this weird Superman punch. And then this weird plant her hand on the ground and let you whoop her ass thing. So, when she plants her hand, this is when you want to do your most damage. So activate your Fury and hit the shit out of her right now. Because this is when you're going to do the most damage. But get out of there, because not only does she summon the tentacles, but she can stomp on you if you stay too long. I don't really get the purpose of the tentacles, these spikes. I just run around killing them because I think they might drop ammunition, and maybe they'll get in the way later on. There's a healing station in the room, which makes this very affordable. You can get away with murder in this fight. And just be aware that the Superman punch that she does has ludicrous range. It's quite fast, it's got lots of forward propulsion, and it's probably going to hurt if it hits you. And there's your move you want to be punishing as best as you can. And right there are some Fury Balls to hopefully get some extra damage in a moment. But you'll also see we're doing decent damage to her with the light machine gun, because it's pretty much the most damage that we've got when it comes to raw DPS. But just move around the room, dodging the ground spikes. The ground spikes are annoying, but they don't do too much damage. And my arsenal's pretty much the same. I've swapped out my single sword that we got at the beginning of the game for the double swords that we found. All I've done is swap all the equipment that I had on it. One thing you'll notice about these dual swords is they're kind of short-ranged. For some reason, the hit detection on them is kind of weird. So I found myself missing when I was slashing, and it made me want to take them off. Luckily, you get a lot of swords in this game because of the plot, so we're going to be getting a sword quite soon that replaces them. But it was my intention, if I got new weapons, to showcase them, because it's one of the areas of the game that's really, really cool, because I just love weapons, and I love weapons in this game, because some of them are really nice. And then I didn't get any, which is bloody typical, isn't it? But there she goes, putting her hand in the ground again. This is our time to get some quick damage. I activate the Fury. Start slashing away. See what I mean though when I say every time I activate the Fury, I don't really maximise on the damage. That's 100% on me. There's so many ways I could be playing it better and preempting it, but I was just kind of freestyling. I've got no excuse either, guys. I wasn't tired. I wasn't bored. You know, I wasn't reacting slow or anything. I don't know what I was doing. I was listening to a live stream. That's my excuse. Which is not even close to an excuse because, you know, I always listen to things when I record stuff, usually, if I can. But on PC it's a little bit more difficult to do that because you can't split the desktop audio, so I was listening to something on my phone. The rare usage of my mobile phone. That was a nice dodge just then. I didn't do it intentionally, but it looked cool. And now she's jumping around again. But because of the fight we had with her before, all of this, we're used to doing it now. So it's just a different version of that last fight. And because it's only one life bar, there's no middle wave with enemies. This is a much easier fight, but also a much better fight when it comes to the consistency. This was weird too. I kind of got a crazy, like, I got fucked though because of it. So she chucked me into the air with weird, awkward physics and collision, and then when I landed on the birth of every single spike before they started spreading out, and it did near 80 damage to me. That's unfortunate. It was a really advantageous position that became a really disadvantageous position almost twice as quick as the latter. Oh, sorry, as the former. But pop the shotgun on now, getting bored with all the other guns. And there's the Superman punch when it hits. So you've got to be real careful of that because she doesn't have to hit you clean. Doesn't do too much damage though. Unfortunately her HP pool feels a bit lower. But yeah, what are the chances of landing directly on the area where all the spikes are born and getting hit by every spike at the same time? If they did any more damage, I was dead then. There's no two words about it. It was such an unlucky thing to happen. It must be said, I wish there was more of a crit system on the bosses. I'm a big fan of having a dedicated way to damage. I feel like it makes it feel more skillful. Like, imagine if you could parry the jump and she fell down, and then you could stand on her and shoot her in the face, and it was all guaranteed crits. But the timing was really difficult. So many cool things. I'm getting my ass whooped. Nah, she's definitely getting the momentum. That weird 80 damage moment clearly tilted me. You need to be careful too. Just because you activate the Fury mode doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to kick ass. Sometimes you can still trade and you can still end up losing, so don't get too overzealous. I hopefully should be able to kill her here with the slow motion. She goes for a swing and she misses. Slashing those ankles, going for that Achilles tendon. Doing a hell of a lot of damage. Getting weirded out by the physics again. Gotta be careful. And then I'm probably going to fish her with the light machine gun. Drop the old Skeletor on her. And there you go, guys. There goes Kamiko's body. Now all we have to do is return to the palace and speak to Gozu. But make sure you loot, because you generally get some of the best stuff in a casual run off the bosses. And that rocket launcher there is one of the most powerful weapons in the game. If you take off all of its attachments, you have a non-elemental damage tool that will deal incredible damage. And it starts with a really, really good corrosive augment. It's just superb. The problem with it is it's a rocket launcher, so you can kill yourself with it, and sometimes it can miss. A lot of the bosses on the harder difficulty have a natural ability to dodge rockets just natively. They'll just dash to the side of them, which is frustrating, but it makes sense. And then here we have All in the Family. Find the mysterious Oyabun. I can't quite remember what mission this is. As we go through the chests and steal everything that's not nailed down. Is this one of the tough ones, or is this one of the ones you can skip? So immediately, going into Vanish, coming down this mountainside. I think this is one of those missions where when you get to the objective, it's just over. I think this is exactly yeah, it is. Some interesting enemies in this location too. I would have liked to have killed more of them and showcased more of them. But outside of dying to stop yourself leveling, you can't fight too much or you become too high level. And it's kind of the whole point of the challenge run. Yeah, when you drop down here, there's a guy stood there, and he's going to tell us some information that's going to change our perspective a little bit. And that's the end of, I think, All in the Family. It's a really quick mission, especially if you skip all the shit like I did. And then when we go here, once we return to the Palace of the Ancients, we're going to get betrayed. Do you notice how there's all these enemies stood in this throne room? It's a massive red flag telling you that you're about to have to fight. And it's a bunch of these ladies. And the ladies are the same as the dolls, the same as all the female Yakuza, same concept. They've got those fans that they can throw, they've got a bunch of spinning kicks they can do. It's kind of the same variant, but it's the Palace variant, and they're going to come with a standard Toro too. The cool thing about this is, because this is main game, they're not going to be ridiculously tanky. They're going to go down quite quick. So this Acolyte, she goes down in one sting from a Vanish. And then when we come over here, there's that one. She goes down with no Vanish. So we can actually feel quite lethal here. And what you're watching right now is what it's normally like when you are appropriately damaged. You know, when your RPG stats are of the right amount of levels for the area that you're in. You'll do this kind of damage, and it'll feel really strong. I love knocking them down and shooting them with stupid stuff. But this one, the Elite Acolyte, she's going to be very durable, but she's weak to corrosion, and she's just got backed up by 2 of the Thunder Toros, who are the greatest Call of Duty commentators ever, right? Hopefully nobody got that ridiculous reference, but what can you do? And they're not even Thunder Toros, they're standard Toros, they don't have elements on them, that one. But do you see what I mean? See how powerful I seem now compared to some of the sequences? And that's how the balancing of the main mission stuff can oftentimes be. It can make you feel very strong and very capable. This entire mission is really fun because we don't feel weak as piss like we've done on some of those other ones. And we can still die, and we can still get our ass kicked, because I'm getting my ass kicked now. But you feel like you're capable. That guy is elemental. I think he might be vulnerable to fire. He is vulnerable to fire, and I just hit him with fire and it did an incredible amount of damage. You see what I mean? See how strong we feel when we're hitting on the right elemental weaknesses and we're up against enemies that are plot related? You feel really capable. And I haven't really spoke too much about the elemental system because I haven't really had too much opportunity to showcase the extreme damage that it can do. But once you get to the right places, you do ridiculous damage. We're talking nothing can stand up to it. No matter what the enemy is, if you hit them with their weakness and you have the right setups, you just decimate. And this has been the first instance of us really being able to showcase that. But here is the Blade of Exile. This sword is one of the best swords in the game. I actually don't like how it looks. It looks a little bit too squarey and Tron-y to me. It looks like the Prometheans from the newer Halo games. But the cool thing about this weapon is it has a bonus where sometimes when you attack people with a special move, i.e. a sting, a slash, or the energy blade thing, it has a rare chance of triggering Vanish. And then from Vanish, you can trigger Vanish again. And you can chain Vanish if you get lucky enough with the proc system and do a lot of damage. And there are times when you can do Vanish, go into a full sting, hit a guy with the sting, and it triggers Vanish again. And it's this wonderful chain of just being incredibly capable and incredibly safe. It did it just then. That wasn't me, guys. That was the sword. And it's superb because not only are you getting the benefits of Vanish, which is the enemies can't see you, but you're also getting the damage bonus too. And you're not using any key to do it. So you'll notice I go into Vanish just then, get fucked by the landing, and then I'm going to hit this guy. Doesn't trigger it just then, so I got unlucky. See if we can do it again. I mean, it's nothing to do with me. See that? I think that was a parry. I think he backhanded the... There it was again. Boom. Hit that guy and got the Vanish off him. But it enables you to be such a terror when it comes to using Vanish. And because Vanish is such a central part of my build, this sword is probably one of the best swords for me. However, because I want to showcase as many weapons as I can, I end up taking it off later on. But just so you know, guys, it's very, very good. Because these enemies are mandatory, I have to kill them. Do you see how the levels that you're getting from killing them? Leveled up in the Throne Rune alone from one fight. So just goes to show that, you know, when you do fight, you can definitely pump up some of those skill points. Oh, that was so sick. You hear the crunch on that? The audio when you hit things in this game is so satisfying. But if you don't know the move he was doing, he does that wonderful, like, flatline flip thing that he does, and he spins multiple times and he throws a projectile at you that's really dangerous because he's got fantastic aim and it blows up. And I shot him as he was doing the pirouette. That was superb. Here's the bell guy. He's just called Belly this time. A couple guys behind us. There are 2 switches that you have to press here, but I'm not going to be pressing them just yet. I'm just going to be focusing on getting rid of the enemies. And these guys are going to rush us. And up here I'm going to hit this guy with the fire because he's vulnerable to fire. Takes off a nice big chunk in his HP, which is lovely to see. I'm curious what those other insanity levels are like, because this game got a New Game Plus update where you can take on different versions of the game that are higher level to enable you to keep replaying through it. And I've not played any of them because the idea of just arbitrarily increasing the stats to make it more difficult is something that I really disagree with. Now, if the enemies were different and the missions were different, then I'm going to be all over that, but I don't know that that's the case. I feel like looter shooters are set in their ways, and it's going to take more than my critiques to get them out of it. Here, using some of the light machine gun, which has an interesting iron sight. You'll notice that the iron sights in this game are kind of unorthodox. They're archaic in a lot of ways. They are a hybrid of reticle on screen and iron sight view. This is what happened when first-person shooters first transitioned towards iron sights, when they weren't confident and there wasn't a standard to adhere to. And it's interesting. There's a lot of features of this game that it uses that are kind of old school, you know, first-person shooter mentalities. Like, you can turn weapon sway off. If you don't turn weapon sway off, your gun moves all over the place when you're doing everything. And it doesn't look natural at all. It looks fucking weird and I hate it. So that was the first thing I turned off. It's like this weird weapon moving. And even with it turned off, certain guns, their idle animation makes them move quite a lot, which can be a little bit annoying at times, which is kind of weird when you think about it. Can you imagine the idea of being annoyed by an idle animation? But it happens, you know. And I think it's because it looks like the gun's moving when it's not moving. Especially when you're shooting. When you're aiming and you're shooting, the gun should just be using the motion of the gun to shoot, I feel. It shouldn't be, you know, swimming back and forth unless it has ridiculous recoil. But you saw it on that light machine gun a moment ago where it looks like it's fanning left and right for some reason. It's almost like Wang's got Parkinson's or something. But use the Fury mode, take on some of the crawlers. I do like some of the reload animations too. Some of those look really nice. You notice how he does different ones too? Sometimes he just does a standard one, sometimes he flips it around. I like the idea of unique reloads. And this game also has a cool system of if you press reload when you don't need to, the weapon will have an animation. So if you've ever seen me flag people off, if you've ever seen me clean my sword or spin the weapon, it's what happens when you try to reload on a full clip. It's a really nice touch. There it is, just then. Because what I like to do is I like to go between all the weapons and make sure they're reloaded. Because there's nothing worse than swapping to a weapon and then having to reload it. It's really frustrating. That cancelled the reload, the falling, by the way. Got to be careful of that. And you really do spend a lot of time on this game reloading. Especially if you're going to use the double up ammos, which are my favourite. But there we go. Hit the switch, and then we can get out of here. Return to Dragon Mountain. And now we've got Stop the Ooze, which is arguably the hardest level in the game. I think this is the most difficult level. This level's always difficult, no matter how well equipped you are. It's just set out in such a way. It's so claustrophobic. There's so many huge enemies. There's so many opportunities for damage. And the mission objective itself is just bad news. Wow, did you see that? We killed that guy in one sting. That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. If every priest went down like that, this level would be fine. But it's not going to do that, guys. It really isn't. So here we go. We've got these guys over here. Doing whatever they do, Mr. Elite Warlord. Watch this. I go back in this room. This dude can hit you through the wall as well. You need to be really careful. This whole encounter up here in that room where they all are is just bad news the whole way. I don't think I've realised that I've killed the dude. So I'm getting into a fight here that I don't need to get into, which is an awareness fail from me. All I need to do is scoot forward and grab it. Look at this. This is those thorn tails attacking me through the ground. That thing there's one of them as well. There's so many enemies here, guys, and they kill you so quickly. There we go, get rid of that guy. Dude hits me through the fucking wall like a beast, and then I die due to the passive fire. But I finally realised, after dying, that I'd killed the lesser priest and the soul was there, so all I needed to do was go and grab it. Now that I've grabbed that, we can move on to the next one. That didn't look like much, guys, but I died a lot there. And then this is the same here. This particular creature down here is weak to lightning. And I couldn't kill it. I could not kill this next dude. It's not the Elite Juggernaut, it's the Thorntail next to him. I used all my guns on it. I used the environment on it. I used everything I could to try and kill this thing. And it just wouldn't die. In the end, I had to swap all the lightning debuffs that I had. All the awesome lightning attachments. And I had to put it on my sword. on my main sword and then use the main sword exclusively, because it just wasn't working. I died on this level more times than I died on any other level. I must have died at least 10 times. This was by far the most difficult part of the run, and it just stemmed from not having the resources that I need to deal the kind of damage you've got to do. And one of the problems with a lot of these setups is these enemies you've got to kill, they heal themselves. They've got passive healing. See how he's getting 3 back, 3 back, 3 back, 3 back? It's just nothing I could do to him was hurting him. And every time he hit me, it was doing all kinds of passive damage, so... There's my ammo back. There's an elite juggernaut that you don't want to fuck with because he has nuclear HP and he will kill you in 1 to 2 hits if he touches you. But if you kill him, you'll get some really cool stuff. It's just you'll never kill him because it takes 400 years. But I come back over here with my sword with Vanish. To give you an idea, this is before I died a few times. I want to show you the damage I'm doing to him. So like just then, I hit him with a sword. You see the trade? And then the toxic gets me as I'm moving away. Puts me down to 1 HP. As it stands, I have to do 5 of those to kill this boss. And I did 1 and ended up losing 45 HP because we traded, because he gave some kind of attack that hit me afterwards and then poisoned me. So that is not even close to a winning strategy. But this is the only thing I've got, you know. This is the most damage I can do. So I'm going to try. And he's healing as well, so I have to do it quickly. But every time I do this, I'm trading with him. And he's healing, and I'm gradually getting weaker. And it's just... It is not good. Not good at all. Luckily, something kills me, and I go back into my menu, and I put everything I can onto this sword. So when I hit him now, it does a little bit more damage. But just seeing that little bit more damage gives me the confidence that I need to be really aggressive and to hopefully take him out. And that's what you're watching now. But it's unfortunate because this is a cool level. It's just the layout of it and the objective. Because you have to kill these things and because there's so many dudes near them, it just makes it really unfun. Because the dudes that are near them are stronger than the dude they're trying to kill. And they're trying to kill you, and it just... Look how many dudes there are. It's just really bad. But this is what we're looking for. We're looking for adversity. We're looking for challenge. I wanted it to be as tricky as I could make it. And if this level afforded more mobility and less trees, and more of a... you know, an environment for me to really get going and do the stuff that I'm good at and that I'm strong with my build, this would have been easier. You know, if there was more of those healing statues in the area, it would have been easier too. But I didn't want to run ridiculous distances to get them, so instead, see that was perfect. Then I get stuck inside this juggernaut, which was not perfect. And just then, guys, that was Vanish triggering Vanish. So the sword saved my ass just then, and we killed it. And it looked easy, didn't it? It looked like, oh, you just ran around doing the thing you've been doing for the last 2 hours, Chris. That didn't look that hard at all. Trust me, guys. That was annoying as fuck. I was getting real mad. Like, I didn't know if I was going to be able to kill that until I swapped all the attachments on my weapon. See my weapon? I'm now going to remove everything from it. This is rare footage of me showing you all the stuff in the menus. The menus are so massive and in-depth, and I didn't really want to share too much of it because, A, I have to talk over it and it adds to the time. But fundamentally... there's just, if you don't understand it, it's just too overwhelming. But hopefully if you're watching this, you do understand it, so you can see what I did there. And that was mainly for the people that are wanting to do this run. But I took all that off because I don't like having elements on my main sword, because if you come up against a boss or an enemy that's really resistant to elements, then it won't do any damage. But when it's just neutral, it does the damage it can do, and it's really useful. But that first section isn't even the hard bit, which I think is hilarious. This is the hard part. This is the part where I remember it from my first 2 runs, because up here, there was a group of those Toro guys all linked together, and I just couldn't kill them because they were so tanky on my first run. I actually streamed this segment and got my ass kicked a very long time ago. Second time, I had a much easier time, but this time... the enemy wasn't a Toro, a group of Toros, it was a huge priest enemy. And I don't remember the huge priest enemy because on my second playthrough, I bumped into him on a side mission, and it was the first time I'd ever seen him in the game, because the enemies cycle in such a way when they instance the level. So there are times when... Have you noticed how I haven't seen any of those serpents? There are these merman serpent things that slither around with tridents, and we've literally seen one of them. I always see that enemy. That's the enemy that's the most, like, prolific in the whole run when I play this game. Not on this campaign. On this campaign, I hardly ever saw the guy. Never saw him for some reason. So it just goes to show that, you know, sometimes you're going to get different things. And I think getting the High Priestess here, getting the big thing, whatever it's called, it's a priest of some sort. I think getting this thing is the easiest layout of this level when it comes to stop the ooze. This is the one you want. Because what I'm going to end up doing, this is me using some of the ambient explosives to hit this guy. This is classic Shadow Warrior 2 right now, where you're moving around the environment, getting chased by a bunch of different things, and you're just trying to hit every explosive you can to dwindle them down, because your weapons aren't either cutting it or you don't have the ammo. And the reason I think that this priest guy is the guy you want is because I'm going to bait him all the way onto a bridge away from all the other enemies, and I'm going to kill him by essentially luring him to a doorway that he can't enter, and I'm going to hit him, run back into the doorway, hit him, run back into the doorway, and it's standard cheesy video games 101. And it's the type of stuff that you hate to have to do, but when you're trying to beat a difficulty, it's the perfect thing to use. And just then was me getting absolutely fucked by a Thorntail. What a beast. I love that. I walk all the way up to him, and he just does his range move that tracks you on the floor and hits you with a spike. But I've kept parts like that in, guys, because it's almost impossible to edit around them. I could have used a lot of crossfades, but I feel like telling you that I died is just a better way of dealing with it. I don't want people to get this illusion that I did all of this without dying, because you can die in 2 hits in this game if you get stuck. If you get put in the wrong place against the wrong enemies, you're done. Absolutely done. And there's a mermaid man as I move past in this area and tell you that we haven't seen one. And then here we go, it's a giant scrubber Raiden, or Raiden as he's called in Mortal Kombat, because we ain't Metal Gear Solid 2 dog. But you'll notice, I hit him with a Vanish, I get absolutely bummed and frost put on me, there's a million enemies here, and I'm just running away over to this bridge. This bridge leads to a chamber that dude can't get inside, and this is quite a big chamber with lots of ambient pots of damage, and a nice little jade container there that I smacked. Here is a mermaid man, a Serpentor as they're called. A superior Serpentor who is vulnerable to fire. And we're going to find that out because he goes in that room on my left, and then something blows up and he dies. So that does massive damage to him. And then something else does damage to him, and then something else does nuclear damage to him, and he's dead. Poor guy. But that enemy, you've barely seen it in this run, and usually you see those every level. But come back over here. The good thing about the enemy being the objective is you know exactly where the enemy is, and you know exactly how close they are to you. So we can come up here, hit him with Vanish, boom, nice big hit on him, get a couple of cheeky hits on his legs. Do not stay near this enemy. I didn't know you could die in 1 hit in this game until he 1-hit me on my second campaign. So you don't want to let that club anywhere near you. And the hitbox on that thing is so bullshit, it ain't even funny. Like, I was watching him swing, because I was super confident on a leveled build, fully, like, completely unkillable, really strong, really capable. I watch him go and do his club, I dash to the side, dead. Like, nowhere near me, perfect timing, perfect spacing, nothing I can do, ack, like, ridiculous. It was hilarious. And then from now on, I've respected the shit out of that enemy, because he's nasty. But it'd be so cool if there was iframes in the dash, and you could use it like a dodge from an action game. It'd be so cool if the parry was more contextual and had more of an effect when it lands. Because when it lands, it does stop attacks, and it does leave them a little bit vulnerable, but there's no cool sound effect, there's no, you know, endorphin releasing or dopamine dripping, like feedback on the parry. There's no cool animation, which it could have had with every different weapon. It could have been really, really lethal and been a legitimate way to play. One of the things I kind of wanted in this game that I didn't get was I would have liked to have seen what they would have done with a one-on-one fight against a humanoid like Wang. Somebody perhaps with a sword who was quite capable, and you could have had a sword fight, a traditional, you know, crazy katana fight. I thought that could have been really interesting. But it certainly never happens in this one. It's more large scale, and the large scale bosses are done really well, I think, for the most, because they utilise elements that I want to see more in shooters. Elements that I think we're forgetting about. I also apologise if my voice starts to sound a little hoarse, guys. When you talk to yourself for 3 hours straight, even if you're using lots of fluid to lubricate, it takes its toll, and every so often your voice just starts failing you. But you see what I mean? This is about as cheesy as it gets. Just keep him here and kill him this way. Easy life. But this is the hardest level in the game. This is the level that I legitimately am always kind of fearing because it never goes smooth for me. It's just the perfect storm of factors that make it difficult. But now we've killed him, we can leave and stop the ooze done. Thank God for that. And we got some Masamune orbs. And a whole host of other shit. But you might be thinking, Chris, well, what are the things that this game's doing on its bosses that other games aren't doing in the first-person area? Oh, now we get to do the corporate shill, sponsored by Darkside Phil. This is another tricky mission, this one. And we've got a new shotgun, ladies and gentlemen, so here's the blunderbuss that's got the spike on it. So, I did get a couple of different weapons, thankfully, but you get some from doing the missions. That's why you should always do the side missions, because they give you some of the most interesting gear. But the things I'm meaning when it comes to the bosses doing things right is there's a boss coming up where he fires lasers at you, and the lasers leave a trail, and it's like a grid of lasers that move in a position forward, and there's a bunch of them, but you can dodge in between the lasers. You're essentially dodging laser grids, and it feels very bullet hell, very old school shmuppy, and it's a nice thing to do in a first-person shooter, because it's, you know, it's dodging, it's skillful, and it means that if you know what you're doing and you do it correctly, you don't get hit. A lot of shooters nowadays have just resigned to the fact that you're going to take damage, and it doesn't matter anymore because you just regenerate HP. But in this game, they've moved away from the regenerating HP, even though you can do that, and they've moved more towards the projectile and the dodging and being evasive. And I really, really enjoy that in regards to that particular fight. And then another aspect of this bullet hell shooting segments that I think are really, really good and really, really useful, and I do very much enjoy them, is the boss coming up again has a shield, which is one of those drones. He summons drones, the drones connect to him via an umbilical, and they make it so he doesn't take any damage. You have to shoot the aerial drones to bring down his shield, and that doesn't exactly sound like the most, you know, creative concept in the world, and we've definitely seen concepts like it. But the thing with it is the drones are quite small, they're quite fast, and they're airborne. So it's teaching the player to attack an aerial target. And there's a trend in first-person shooters, I notice. We don't ever have to attack things above us. Like, we track left and right, we aim directly in front, we aim all around on this axis, but we never have to show our aim against a moving, fast, airborne target. And I think maybe the reason for that is a lot of the times those targets tend to be helicopters that we just use like stingers to kill. A lot of the times those targets might be some kind of dragon in some kind of fantastical game that has better options. A lot of the time it might be some kind of flying demon in like a Doom game, and those games are kind of an exception because a lot of the enemies in those games are aerial and quite mobile, so your aim is constantly getting tested. But fundamentally, there's not enough skill tests when it comes to aim and hand-eye coordination in boss fights, in my opinion. A lot of the time it's just, here's a bullet sponge, shoot the fuck out of him and hopefully you don't die. And those can be fun, but they're not testing that you can aim. Like, I want to show that I can aim, and I want to get better aim. I want my aim to be so disgusting that I can do things that people don't think looks real. Like, that's the goal, you know, make your aim really, really good. Practice and get used to the sensitivities and become unstoppable. But then when the game never really asks you to use it, it just seems a little bit silly, doesn't it? And I love those drones. I don't like the idea of a boss hiding behind a shield because it's always frustrating. But when that shield is a bunch of popcorn drones that I can use my aim to kill, I think it's interesting. I like the idea of having something that is fast and mobile and dangerous that teaches you how to react quickly and use your hand-eye coordination. That to me sounds really, really fun. Like, one of the most fun things I do in this game is, you know, see how I'm doing the sideways dash while I shoot this guy? Being able to keep my aim on this guy while I'm dashing all the time, not the easiest thing in the world to do. Not the hardest, of course, it's quite a big target, but just doing it and practicing it and getting better at keeping with my tracking is really helpful because it means I can be dangerous and evasive, which is what you want. So an aerial version is just even better to me. And the reason that I would like more emphasis on aerial enemies is purely because it makes your aim better. Like, how many times are you perfect at aiming left and right on a flat plane where you are, but the moment something's above you, you get thrown off because you're not used to doing it. You're not used to your vertical sensitivities. You know, it's one of those things, if you're not challenged that way, you'll never get that muscle memory of being able to do it. And it's so interesting that we don't do that, because it can be really, really interesting and really, really fun. If I were to design bosses with that kind of verticality in mind, I would have it so that they had some kind of very damaging move, incredibly damaging move that had to charge up on a timer, and then when it happened, it was super damaging or even instantly killed you. But to stop it, there could be some kind of flying asset of some sort that's cool and awesome, that's mobile but fair, and for instance, maybe on the first time he does it, there's one of them, the second time there's two, third time there's three, so on and so forth. But those assets die in one bullet, but you have to take them down, and they're intentionally being evasive. Things of that nature. Testing your ability to aim under pressure. All kinds of features that are going to make you better at the game. Because it's just how it works, you know. And in a game like this that's so fast-paced, I am surprised there aren't more aerial enemies. Because there's so many guns to deal with them. You've got a double jump and a crazy dash to cover distances, and it seems like the perfect game for it. But it just adds to this quandary that I've had for quite some time. Where are all the aerial enemies in games? And it must be this whole realism thing and this military shooter where every aerial enemy is a helicopter, so it doesn't really have its same appeal. But I like the idea of the enemy being evasive and hard to hit, but when you hit them, they get hurt and they go down. Like, I don't even mind if it's the Mario conceit of, 3 times and they're dead. Just imagine a first-person shooter boss where the difficulty is hitting them, but when you do, they die. I think that sounds awesome, and it's never really done that way. It's always done in the pursuit of hit them 500 times, but they're kind of slow-moving and huge. And I think we've done that to death. It's time to get a bit more creative and do different things, and some games have. There's decent examples of some diversity and some quick things. And I always think of things like, the shooting games in arcades where you use light guns? Games like Time Crisis and Virtual Cop, and anybody remember, was it Vampire Knight? Like, a lot of those bosses were this big, hulking, huge thing, and then it'd have like a familiar, some shitty little goblin flying about near it that was really evasive, but if you shot the goblin, it stunned the huge thing. And of course, when you're using a light gun, it's a little easier to do that for some people maybe than perhaps on a controller. But I always remember those fights because I always thought they were interesting, because there's this huge thing that you can't stop unless you shoot it in the face, because some of them had like a face weak point or a part of their body, but they were intentionally moving around a lot. We never got those mechanics or those philosophies and design mentalities in other games, really. And then there are games that did do it, but it was never something that was adhered to as a standard. We didn't really get that evasive enemy, and it must come from the limitation of players not being good enough to do it, maybe, or not wanting to have to be that gifted on the aim. Because what you have to bear in mind fundamentally is games are made on a base level to be enjoyed on a very casual level, because about 90% of the people that play them are very casual players. So if you make everything a skill test, and the skill test is quite high, those casual players are going to fail it. They're going to have a horrible time, and most people play games to have a good time. That's not what they want, and that's not going to lead to good sales. That's not going to lead to, pleasing your publisher and getting further funding to do cool new things, and it's just a vicious cycle. But there comes a time when it would be at least nice to have that happening. Because even if you do put like tons of aerial enemies that are a nightmare, if you make them weak, they're okay, Make them a nightmare, but when you shoot them, they die. And maybe when you shoot them, they explode and they kill a lot of things around them, which could be really good, or they stun everything around them. It's risk versus reward. It's the thing that Gears of War 4 did horribly with the Sentinels. There's an enemy in Gears of War 4 called a Guardian, or a Sentinel, depending on what you want to call it, and it is a flying machine that has a shield that it can regenerate on the front of it to block itself from bullets, and it carries a huge weapon that does a lot of damage. The whole point of this enemy is to fly around and be a dickhead. It doesn't fly around evasively, doesn't fly around in a difficult pattern, isn't very... it isn't the type of thing that's a reflex test or an aim test. It's a nuisance that flies behind geometry and you can't see it, and flies to parts of map you can't see, and does a whole host of annoying things and hurts you and kills you really quickly because it's got a really good gun. and then when you get its shield down to be able to kill it, it then fucks off and regens its shield and comes back, and the whole thing is just a pain in the ass. Because when you take its shield down, it takes just as much damage to die, and therein lies the big problem. If the Guardian's shield was its life, and then when you got the shield down it goes down really quickly, it would have been a very fun and balanced enemy. But it isn't. It's an enemy that just exists to take a beating, that flies around and is a dickhead. It's the enemy that when it turns up it can instantly wipe your whole team because it's overpowered as fuck and takes too much to kill. And it's just a completely horrible enemy in the grand scheme of things, because all it does is add difficulty, but it's not difficulty that's enjoyable or counterable. It's just, here's this problem, the only solution is shoot it ad nauseum. And I feel like that mentality is creeping into a lot of games. There isn't as much grace with some things, and as much as I'm not the biggest fan of these video games that go full hog on the puzzle elements of a boss fight, where here's this huge boss that would be really cool if it actually attacked you, but instead you have to flick these 3 switches and then this building falls on it. And it's like, well, it was very cinematic, but it didn't feel like I was fighting a boss. It felt like I was doing a puzzle. And there's a mixture between these two things. There's a mixture between being too gameplay heavy and making you shoot something for 50 minutes, and being too puzzle heavy and making you do 3 eclectic things and then completely avoid fighting at the end. In between those two spaces, there's a common ground that needs to be found, where first-person shooter bosses can be better and more enjoyable. And some games have really cool ones. I think that Titanfall 2 had really interesting bosses because it embraced what that game did well, which was the Titan combat, and you could counter certain Titans with other Titans and use their abilities, and you could do a lot of damage if you knew what you were doing. And I think it was a really nice balance of, they were very dangerous, you were very dangerous, but you both had the tools to kind of counter each other, and it felt a lot like a PvP session. Not necessarily against the most capable person, but certainly against an enemy that would jack you up. But right now, if you look at this, these drones, this is like as much verticality as this game really gets. Because you're never really assailed by things that fly. And these drones, admittedly, they move quite quickly when they reposition. So these things can really test your aim if you're wanting to get a little bit better. And I like them for that reason. I'd like them more if they died in one hit and didn't vacuum you towards them, which is really frustrating, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. But I sit on this cusp of loving the first-person shooter genre, but feeling like we've been stagnant for a while. I feel like mobility was probably the last real bastion of improvement, and I feel like that was done by Titanfall 2. Obviously, I think the groundwork was put in there by Quake before it, and Mirror's Edge, and certain other games. But in a contemporary fashion, I really do think that what Titanfall did itself, Titanfall 1 and 2, was the logical next step of making it accessible while still technical and still really, really satisfying, and I think they did a really good job with that. But since that, I don't think we've had any of the cool innovations that we've had before. If you think of it, the slow motion mechanics, after the Matrix came out, they were everywhere, weren't they? And some games did them really interestingly, some games did them creatively. Hell, even Titanfall 2 had a time mechanic that, and a stimming mechanic and a whole, like a phase shift mechanic that put you into different dimensions. There was a whole host of different things that they utilised that you could say are derivatives of those time mechanics. Games like Time Shift and Fear. So many different games. Oh, by the way, guys, the audio for the game here is not going to be there, because I had a problem with my headset when I plugged it in. I lost game sound, and then I restarted OBS, and then I had to replug my headset in, and I completely forgot that if you do that, you lose audio in the game, because the Sennheiser's conflict with the drivers of everything else. And suffice to say, it's a pain in the dick. But it's only for one fight. I managed to catch it. I'm very happy I caught it, because I would have been very annoyed. And the footage that you're watching right now is me using the rapid fire attachment on the revolver. And did you see how many of those shots completely missed when I had the dot on that guy? Yep, never doing that again unless I get a better setup. So we're going to be running around and killing. This mission is Violent Takeover. It's one of my favourite in the game. It's got a really, really cool fight coming up, and I'm going to die in it, which is really frustrating. But time mechanics in shooters like Fear and so on and so forth, there's been a dozen of those that have had that kind of mechanic. Time mechanics have been done to death. I think regenerating health is one of the newer mechanics that's now been completely done to death, and we need a new healing paradigm. to set a standard for video games, but I don't know what it is. There is a new frontier of mechanical changes and inspirations for first-person shooters that are not quite there yet, and I don't know what they're going to be, but I'm looking forward to encountering them later on. One of them for me that I'm really liking at the moment is the idea of manual healing. Manual healing is not a new concept at all, it's been around for a while, but the idea of using an injection to quickly heal yourself, and that injection having a respawn timer before you can do it again, but instead of waiting behind a wall to regenerate, you just stim yourself actively and then you can get back into the battle. And I think Black Ops 4 was a game that did this perfectly. I just think it's tragic that there was no campaign to really fully utilise it to showcase what it could have been like in like a single player context. Hell, I'm kind of pissed off that the zombie mode doesn't use it. But stimming yourself is not a new concept that it invented. That mechanic was in Infinite Warfare before that. That mechanic was in Bad Company before that. Bad Company 1. The main healing device in that game was to stab yourself with a needle. The big difference there is it took like 40 minutes to do it, and it was really fucking annoying, and I hated it in that game. But yet when you make it quick and responsive and almost skillful feeling and reactive, I loved it. And then Modern Warfare came out and the stim in that game is slow again, and I don't like it half as much as I like the one in Black Ops 4, so there's definitely a sweet spot in my opinion for this manual healing, but I like the idea of it, and I think Gears of War 5 did a really, really cool thing with their stim, because instead of making it, heal you instantly, it gave you armor, and the armor could take absolutely anything when you activated it, and you could activate it in reaction to what the enemies were doing. So if you knew that there was a boss about to do a move that was going to instantly kill you, you could activate stim, and your shield would take it. The stimming effect on your body would give you seemingly infinite HP in that instant to take that move. And I think that that is absolutely amazing. If we could combine that philosophy with the stim feature of Black Ops 4, where as you activate the stim, you get whatever you want it to be, iframes or armor or some kind of property that makes you unkillable in that instant, and then it wears off after, I don't know how many frames it'd have to be, but it'd have to be realistic but also strategic, so you can't just use it and get, free from everything. But then also have that injection be a heal over time, and a decent heal over time at that. I think that that would be absolutely superb, because you could use the heal as a parry if need be, if skillful enough, and I think just the idea of that is superb. One thing here, guys, this rocket launcher is the one I was given on that mission, and I said it was incredibly damaging. If you hit these enemies with this, it kills them instantly. The problem with it is, if you hit the floor near you, it kills you instantly too. So I just nearly killed myself just then by virtue of how damaging the splash radius on this rocket is. Be very careful with this gun. There's no excuse to die here. This is a really good fight, it's a really good environment, there's good enemies, there's good environments, but look at that. I killed myself with the rocket because I'm an idiot. I do things like that sometimes. But what can I say? I'm going to take it off now, and I'm going to proceed to probably use standard weapons, because as fun as this is, if all I'm going to do is kill myself with it, I probably shouldn't be using it, but I wanted to show it because it's really cool. But watch this. See how the enemy wasn't looking at me, but he dashed away from the missile the moment I fired? See that? Not looking at me, dashes perfectly away from the missile. That's the auto dodge that the enemies have for the rocket, because the rocket's so strong. Best thing to do, guys, shoot it at the floor like I did and don't kill yourself. But never direct impact anything, because it's a waste of time. They've just got this bullshit auto dodge, and I really don't like that as a mechanic, but I understand why it exists. But I'm so hopeful for the future of first-person shooters, but at the moment we're stagnant in an area that I don't like, because if you look back at the old ones that this game is definitely paying homage to, first-person shooters back in the day, what were they? Games where you had 500 weapons on a single man with no pockets. 500 ridiculous weapons that did 500 ridiculous things, all kind of secondary features and tertiary functions, games like Turok, games like Resistance, games that had entire suites of crazy things. Remember Daikatana, that wonderful flop from id? Remember Doom, remember Quake, remember Unreal, remember Hexen, remember these games? Crazy games with suites of weapons that felt amazing and tools for every job. Awesome, right? Then you think of all the fast games, all the movement-based games. that had the bunny hopping and the strafing and the rocket jumping, all of those things that they inherited, the speed of the arena shooter combined with the arsenals of these crazy shooters. Those two things are essentially prehistoric now in their design elements because you don't see them enough because they've been replaced. There was this move towards realism that took away hipfire in the favour of ADSing. There was this move towards realism that took away having lots and lots of, you know, really diverse weaponry and cool weaponry in favour of having two guns. Two guns! I've always hated the two-gun thing. It really pisses me off, but it's standardised now and every game does it. It's just so crazy to me why you would ever just want two guns. And it's obvious that they do it for the balancing conceit, but at some point when you're ruining the fun of your game, does it matter if it's balanced or not? I just don't get that. It's like when they nerf meta setups in cooperative multiplayer when it's against the engine. Who the hell's hurting right there? Who's hurting if no player's getting shit on? I don't get that. Like, why would you take away this awesome setup? And another thing that's happening in these modern games and these modern shooters is this overemphasis on the scripted sequences. There was a time where scripted sequences were quite rare, and when they happened, they meant something, you know? But that time seems to be long gone because almost every segment now is a scripted sequence, and instead of spotting the scripted sequences, it's searching for the unscripted segments where you can actually be something and do something and have agency. And those old school games, those arena games, those games with vast arsenals, all of those games were the complete reverse. That's the thing I love so much about this game. As much as I've mentioned a lot of its flaws, and it has even more flaws I haven't mentioned, I love the fact that predominantly everything you've seen in this game has been me running around using the mechanics to play the game. There's been some story and some cutscenes that I've trimmed out, but none of them overstay their welcome, and you don't walk around them because they're cutscenes, you know? They don't turn the cutscenes into gameplay, so then when you replay the game you can't even fucking skip them. Like, does anybody like having to endure a cutscene the second time around because they did it in engine to make it look immersive and amazing, and look at the graphics, and if you don't know the target, you are the target, zero going dark and all that other bollocks? Like, who wants that? Who wants to sit and stand around and watch someone's animated characters give off exposition you've already heard? Like, it benefits no one, and it hurts the replayability of your game. Here is another example of me going into the menus and swapping some of the weapons. I noticed that the creature that we're taking on here is weak to toxic, and I didn't have a toxic weapon, so I popped on the toxic weapon of my choice at the moment. One of the cool things about this game that you might not have realised if you're just watching it casually is you can put elements on any weapon. This weapon is not a corrosive weapon by trade, it's just a weapon. What you put on them is entirely up to what you like, and when you play this game you will get those setups where you like putting X on Y and so on and so forth. And it's one of the cool parts about Shadow Warrior, where everyone's kind of got their own setup and their own go-to stuff. You know, I really like the Sting, I really like the shotgun with a charge shot, I really like the nail gun with doubled up ammo and the chance to refresh its clip. These are my characteristics in this game with my build. Yours will be completely different, and you know, it's the type of stuff you can't really ever say that about a COD campaign, can you? Especially the Infinite Warfare kind of ones, the Infinity Ward ones, sorry, because you can't even pick your fucking gun in that, so you can't even say, oh, I run this gun, whereas I run that gun. Like, if you play Black Ops 2, you can pick what gun you want to run on their campaign, and you can actually have your own thing. You can even pick perks and attachments, and you can personalise it and make it more interesting. And then you contrast it to something like this when there's just such a breadth of choice to it. You know, one of the things that people like doing in looter shooters and what makes them so popular is the fact that it's yours, you know? So let's see how I die coming up here, guys. I'm going to hit this boss with a Sting, and I'm going to trade with him somehow, even though I killed him. And when you kill people that shouldn't be able to hurt you, that's not even mentioning that I leveled up when I killed him, so I should have been able to get a full heal from the level, but instead it just killed me. So I don't know what that was about. But we got the Zweihander, so we can use another light machine gun. This one looks like something out of Warhammer. This one's a really crazy looking one. Some of the light machine guns just look really sick. They take up a ton of the screen though, so just be careful. And then coming up on this corridor there's going to be a transition, and we're going to get the audio back. And the music that was playing will then cease. But move over to finding Kamiko's body.
Do you have any idea how weird it is?
And then we'll see what goes on from this moment on, because we're coming on to the final segment of the game here, guys. There's 2 bosses left. However, both of them are going to take a big beating, because once again my damage is kind of lacking.
We'll need a key card.
You've been there before?
This is my old stomping ground.
But if you want to, you know, do the sting spam on the bosses, that is probably the most viable way of doing them. I'm kind of not doing it because I always do it, and I feel like I've used sting so much you've probably seen a decent amount of it. And I hope nobody gets annoyed by the amount of sting usage. It's just so good. Why would you not use it, you know? But a couple of these Zilla soldiers coming up here. Use my Magnum a little bit. FOV is back to being a little bit high with the weapon scaling, because I don't think I've changed it, but I'll change it coming up. And you'll see a little insight into the console command that does it and what comes up. Because you have to hold control and press the tilde key to get the console command to come up, and then in there you can insert the scaler to make your gun look a bit smaller. Because that is one of my big complaints when it comes to the aesthetic of Shadow Warrior 2. Even if you play on a high FOV, the gun still takes up like 900% of the screen. And you might not really notice why that's much of a problem if you play on console, because a lot of the FOVs on console are quite small, so the guns do always look very big. But it's just a visibility issue that you don't need to deal with if you can fix it. And you can fix it, so why would you not, you know? But I really hope that I think that, and they call something like Pigs Can Fly. There's a really Flying Hog Productions or something. It's the team that made this game have got an unusual name, and I think this game came out in 2016, 2017. So there's been a few years of them doing whatever it is that they're doing, and I really hope they're working on another shooter. Because so far I think they've only done shooters, right? They did Hard Reset, they did Shadow Warrior, the remakey thing, and then they did this one. And I think the stuff that they started in this, some of the elements are so good, I can't wait to see what they do next. But it's been a decent amount of time, and it makes me wonder what they're actually doing. Because if they can take all the good things from this, like, you know, the sound design, the feeling of hitting people, the diversity in the weapons, the really, really fun mobility system, you know, some of the complexities on command normals for melee attacks and parry systems, and, you know, interesting abilities and RPG systems. Maybe if they could take away some of the things that didn't work as well, like the looting system that's just so crazily overly done that there's so much to it the whole time, and you seem to feel like a caretaker over an inventory system that just doesn't have the right amount of tools to access the information that you need. Like, I don't think you can even sell items in bulk at the shops. You have to sell them all individually, and you sell hundreds of items in this game. It's such a vast oversight. There's no dragging and dropping. There's a lot of features that just ponders the mind. Look at that guy doing the Jean-Claude Van Damme, just kicking my ass. But if they can just take a lot of the good, you know, the visual design, the humour, the graphics, because I think the game looks great. It's got a really, really nice aesthetic that just makes it look all neon and futuristic and shiny. There's a lot of gloss on everything. A lot of the, like, specular reflection mapping, and it's just, there's a lot of charm. The animations too, the unique animations, and a lot of the touches that certain other first-person shooters don't really look at or care for. There's a lot here that is really, really good. If they can just kind of focus it into something like... I would prefer the levels to be more linear and less sandboxy. I think it's a cool idea that they went with, and I can commend them for doing it. But if the next thing they did was more linear, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. Because you can have linear levels that lead into quite wide-ish gauntlets. That's pretty much what the new Doom did. And this is the console command, by the way. So this is me changing the... Watch the size of the sword, guys. See that? See how it looks like the sword kind of zoomed out and my arms got longer? It just makes it look a bit more natural. Makes it look like it suits the perspective a bit more, and it's not zoomed and claustrophobic. Of course, the weapons are still going to look big on this game because they are very big on the hood. That's probably another thing that Total Biscuit complained about. And then here is Orokai Zilla and the Zilla Mechanoid. So for this boss, guys, you want to go into your inventory and you want to turn off every single elemental infusion that you have so that all your weapons do standard damage. If you do that, every gun you shoot this guy with will do damage. And the fight is really simple. He has a ton of different moves, and by ton he's probably got like 4 or 5. Keep your distance, shoot him a lot, and he'll eventually die. But he has a bucket load of HP if you don't have the damage like I don't. And a lot of his moves are all projectiles, so you can dodge them. And this is the boss that has the two elements I spoke about earlier. The laser grid system that enables you to dodge the lasers themselves in like a bullet hell system by ducking in between the gaps and going in between them. And then he will also get the drones that shield his HP, which you have to do a bit of an aim test to get rid of them because they float around those holographic trees that are adding to the aesthetic of this level. And it's just shoot this guy for the next 10 minutes basically. But his barrage can be easily dodged by just side dashing. When he puts his arms out, it means he's going to do the electricity move, so I would recommend that you circle around him and dash the whole time, trying to get in front of the move so that it doesn't cut you off. It's a really good opportunity to hit him with a rocket too, because when he does that move, he cannot dodge the rocket, and it has a decent amount of startup, which is really, really well balanced, and I love that a lot. When you go close to him, he will stomp the ground. He does all kinds of different swamps, and he goes for a punch that he's got. And that's pretty much the extent of what he has. If you keep a distance, he's going to do the barrage a lot, and he's going to do the lasers a lot, and that's exactly what you want. Because when he does the laser, we're going to fire the rocket, and he's not going to auto-dodge it, and the rocket's going to do the most damage. So, he also has a gun. See, just then? Boom. Rocket did 200 damage. That's what I should be doing here. I should be waiting for him to go into that move, and then hitting him with a rocket, and it would be the smartest way to put him down. But because it's a Shadow Warrior and it allows you to do what you want, I'm just going to freestyle him and shoot him as best as I can and get rid of him. There are tons of drops in this room. Just look at the map for all the ammo. Like just then, that should have been a rocket. Also, if you get Fury, you want to use it on that moment so you can guarantee to do the most damage. Fury with a good rocket setup is probably going to do incredible damage to this guy. But look, 200 damage is not the most damage, but it's better than doing 20 damage a shot. And then the heavy machine gun, the light machine gun is going to be the thing that does really, really good damage too. This is going to be my main damage dealer, and if I had a better setup for giving it more ammunition, it would have been really, really strong. But this is another one of those segments where it'd be nice if there was a way to... And then here's his armor, and do you see the umbilical cord, the electric umbilical cord to the drone? You have to take the drone out, which takes 2 shots, and then he'll lose his armor. And see what I mean? It's just a quick aim test. Can you hit the drones? Now you can hit the boss. It's simple, but it works. And I really like it. I think it's, for a boss that's rather simplistic and doesn't have much going for it, but a ridiculous amount of HP because of my build, it's touches like that that elevate it over just being average. And it's an idea, it's a concept that can easily be translated into something really cool. Like, there could have been all kinds... One of the things that I think that this game could have done, especially on a boss like this, would have been various damage systems to various limbs. If you had been able to damage his arms and stop him from using a move, and then maybe he has to rebuild it somehow, or, you know, hurting his mobility by damaging his legs, or hurting his targeting systems by damaging his head, and then maybe when you damage something, it could have taken more damage, like the limb system in Bloodborne. There are so many features and so many ideas that you can come up with, even just, you know, talking to yourself on a commentary for a walkthrough, which are pretty sweet, that would have just given it that extra element of fun and intricacy that doesn't necessarily have to be complex, but it means a lot when the person's playing, because it adds depth, it adds layers. And here's me activating Fury with a light machine gun, and I'm going to have to activate a reload because I didn't reload because I cancelled it, and then we see what damage we get with this, which is pretty decent. But look at all the reloading. Oof, that's a problem. Too much reloading. Missed out on so much damage. But what did I say, guys? Every time I activate that mode, I fuck it up. Definitely not the way you want to be doing it. But keep on shooting him, keep on picking up the ammunition. I mentioned that this was part of a passion project of mine. And that's absolutely true, because nobody needs this walkthrough. This is one of those games that not only has it got a bit of a stigma when you search for it, because there's a lot of dislikes over certain mechanics, it's not the most difficult, even though it does have beat the hardest difficulty achievement, which, you know, somebody might need this in the long run. Fundamentally, if you're watching this because you probably like my channel, or you stumbled onto it and you want to watch something different. When I say passion projects, it's essentially going to be projects that I'm I shouldn't really make. Like, I shouldn't make this walkthrough because there's no market for it. It's silly for me to make this walkthrough. It's probably going to hurt my channel more than it helps. But I love this game, and I've always wanted my channel to be about, you know, the love of games, to be about making walkthroughs that help people, to be about being as critical as I can about the industry and about development, so that we can make games better and get what we deserve and get what we pay for and push the art form forward. Those have always been some of the core tenets of what I do here, the integrities of the channel. And every so often, it's so easy to get burned out on making walkthroughs for games that you don't even like that much. You're just doing it because they're new. You're doing it because they will get views, because they're new. That's literally it. They've just come out, people are interested in them, and even if they're the most boring, uninspired garbage that you'll only ever play once, you know, the numbers say cover that game because it will reward you better than covering a game that perhaps people don't like. And that's where the passion projects come in, because not only do the passion projects allow me to share with you something that's special for me, but it also kind of lets me decompress from playing games that aren't that great, but everyone's got a hard-on for them. And then I can play something that I think's great, that people perhaps don't even care for. And there's going to be a couple of those projects coming up, because it rejuvenates my luster for doing this, and I think that that's really important. And I felt it when I was editing this walkthrough, when I was recording it. I felt that feeling that I used to get when I first started doing it, that excitement of making something that I'm proud of, and making something that I think is going to be fun and enjoyable, and hopefully people are going to resonate with. It was good to feel that, and there's been a few guides this year where I did not feel that at all. I felt the complete opposite. It's the reason I didn't do the Star Wars game that came out, because I hated it. And if I'd have made that walkthrough, I would have been miserable the whole time. And there's probably somebody watching this thinking, Jesus Christ, you miserable? I thought you were miserable this whole commentary. But this is me in a pretty jovial mood. You know, if I'd have done that, it would have been suicide watch the whole time. And I just didn't want to do it, even though the smarter move was to do it. I did intend to do a balls deep of that game, so I could share some thoughts, because a lot of people ask me why I don't like it, why didn't you like it, and I didn't like it because it wasn't very good. Average to me is not exceptional, and I'm sorry if you like that game and you think it's great. I'm happy for you, but it doesn't get away from the fundamentals that most of the shit that's in that game is not very good, and it's nowhere near the caliber it deserves to be considering the people that made it. And I don't understand how a game 10 years later can be inferior to God of War 3. I just don't. It makes no sense to me. But it is what it is. And we've been afforded a brief moment here to talk about passion projects in a boss fight where all I'm doing is evading the most simple pattern at the moment and kicking some ass. It's just... this is the unfortunate side of a challenge run, guys. This is the type of thing you see in action games all the time, but you don't really mind it too much in action games because it comes with the territory, but when you do it in a shooter, you really feel it. And I'm going to try and finish this guy with a sting, because usually I like to kill the bosses with a melee weapon, just to make it feel like I'm a badass ninja. But you'll notice that the drone is hiding behind the boss, making it really difficult for me to shoot it, which is unfortunate because the boss will take no damage until I do. But I love the idea of this aim check. It reminds me of the Rage 2 boss fight at the end of the game. You had to shoot certain parts of the boss to stop it from doing things, and the parts they had to shoot weren't moving quick enough and they were way too big for it to be a real aim check. But I appreciated the fact that it wasn't just shoot this thing 500 times. And, you know, for all the parts of this game that I really adore, that fight was not a good example of why this game is good. Fortunately, when you do it, you're going to be unstoppable Wang with some crazy resources at your disposal, and you're going to put him down in an instant and really wreck him. On my second campaign, my pistol with explosive rounds on it that I was using was able to one-tap those drones in the sky effortlessly, and then when I shot the boss with it, it was doing more damage than I was doing when I was in the Crazy Fury mode. It was doing a lot of damage to him. When I put the nail gun on, it was doing the same damage that the rocket was doing. It was absolutely decimating him. I put him down really quickly. It was very fun. And then this is the final mission of the game. The Battle of the Gates against the final boss, which is a spoiler, I guess, but you totally saw it coming. And the game's going to play that ridiculous song while we do it, where it's on about warrior, or whatever it keeps saying. The whole time you're doing it, it just keeps saying that one word. It's fantastic. It just keeps talking about being a warrior and shit. And I don't know if that song was made for the game or if it's by that band at the beginning. I don't know if it's Night Ranger or whoever it is. I should really Google that, but it's funny because as soon as you start, it just kicks up this wonderfully cheesy, classic rock ballad, and then you get to take on the ancient goddess Amiona as she turns into a huge, crazy crab bug spider thing, and the rocket launcher does incredible damage against her. But I'm not going to use it in the most effective way because she's going to start healing her HP in a moment, and I completely forgot about that phase, so I didn't capitalize correctly with the right things. But when her tail starts glowing, the bulbous tail she's got, you need to attack it and destroy it, and if you don't, she's going to heal. And unfortunately, because my damage is kind of low, she completely heals before I get a chance to kill it. But I love this fight because it's stupid. It looks great, it sounds great thanks to cheesy music, and it's just quintessential old school circle strafe and shoot the shit out of it. Like, as much as I've been critiquing, this tried and true tirade of hitting a boss 1,000,000 times, this is a challenge run, so I have to hit it way more. But it works in this scenario because I can dodge and I can feel like I'm on top of things. Usually, that weapon I was using, the Orochi, usually that's enough to just kill this boss. Just keep hitting it with that and you'll be fine. I was doing no damage with it at all, so that's a big red flag. So instead, I'm just going to use the guns. And what's going to happen is, the next time I damage the boss to the threshold of it going into that glowy mode again, I'm going to use the Fury mode to kill the tail. Once you kill the tail, she can't heal anymore. And then it's just a battle of attrition. But this is a pretty long fight. You're looking at like a 6-minute fight. And this whole time is me just mashing shift to just keep to the side of it. Because the moves that she does is kind of hybrid of some of the Kamiko moves, where the spikes on the ground can turn up. She can hit the ground, she can rush you and things. But as long as you strafe to the side most of the time, and you react to what she does, you'll dodge almost all of the dangerous stuff. The web can be a problem if you get stuck in it. The projectile right there, you can out-dodge all of it. And there is a heal station in here, so even if you do get hit, you'll be okay. But it's just a bit of an attrition. And I feel like shooting the priestess on the top of it, the goddess, is probably the key to doing more damage, but doing it with this grenade launcher is a work of art because it's a pain in the ass. But you see, now it's doing a bit more damage, isn't it? Here we go. Time to get rid of this tail. And once the tail is gone, she loses the capacity to be a bitch. And then we can just wreck her some more. You can do the charge slash and back away using that. And you can sting and hit that way, but I just didn't do it in this particular instance because I was having a lot of fun just strafing around and hitting her with the rockets and the grenades and just use all my arsenal for once. But yeah, the music is superb. It's really funny. And if you notice, it says she's immune to powers. I don't think I've tried Vanish on her, but it probably still does decent damage. I know that you can't touch her with a lot of the other moves, because I sometimes try them against the bosses just to see how they work. And this is the Einhander. This is the... it's an SMG that I got later on the game, and I swapped it out for the Uzi when I got it, but I think I got it for killing that last boss. So I didn't have too much time to use it, which is unfortunate, because it's kind of a cool one. Like a crazy, zappy SMG. I do like how the barrel glows red as well when you shoot the gun a lot. It's kind of... I don't know if it's dumb or like realistic, but it's a nice detail. It doesn't seem to have any... I don't think it has any repercussions on the gameplay. Some games, when you get like a damage boost, it makes things... That was kind of scary. It can sometimes make things glow, but I think that's just because you fire it too much and it's a piece of detail. I don't think it is any gameplay implications, but it's just interesting that they do that. You'll notice that the Zweihander did it as well. This is a fun gun to use, this. It makes me think of the nail gun too, because of how fast it fires. Its damage is not too great, but it shoots so quickly. Get the right things on this, like, do you see that? It just got a passive, bigger clip reloaded. It has a percentage chance of it to reload its bigger clip. I love stuff like that. There's so many cool features in this game, dude. I really wish there was more to that type of stuff in a lot of games. Just really cool procs and really cool passives. It's the type of stuff that the action RPGs have. You know, like Path of Exile and is it Grim Dawn, stuff like that. Those games have all got really, really cool setups that you can have, and I love the idea of those features creeping into games where you can actually have agency over the combat, where your actions are one-to-one and they don't involve, you know, all the macroing and what have you. Like Devil May Cry with those kind of procs and stuff is just something I've always wanted to see. And a shooter with it as well. Like for me, a shooter I've always wanted to see is a shooter with mechanics like Call of Duty, with the systems of something like Fallout, you know, where it's set in a huge world full of RPG elements. It'd be so cool. Because the RPG elements in Fallout are amazing. The shooting, not so much. Fallout 4 made the shooting better, but shit on all the RPG stuff. Like, I love the idea of mixing the genres, but doing it in a way to create new things and new perspectives. Like right now, this is when I noticed that my hand was cramping like a bitch. Because I am mashing that shift button, guys. I've been mashing it for some solid time right here, and then I put the sword on to try and finish it with the sting, and the sting doesn't do all that much damage. You see how shit that was? That was disappointing. So I put the Vanish on, it mutes the music, boom, still nothing, like, goodness me, there we go, and she's down. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen, Shadow Warrior 2, no pain, no gain, video walkthrough is over. We did it without using the no healing flame, with no healing augments, with no healing abilities outside of picking up med packs and the passives in the environment. We did it low level, which is another one of the criteria that I wanted. And we did it without hitting any of the side missions. So, pretty much, we did all the crazy things. And then at the end here, I wanted to show you my skill cards, to show you what I was rocking and what my stats were, to kind of back up the whole point of the challenge run. I was hoping to show you the difficulty too, but I didn't know where it was in the menus. You can come back to the start and it tells you what difficulty you're on, but I've already done that at the start, so I didn't see a point. But here we go. No life mastery, no call for medic. I did Shadow Fury, Like the Wind, Sting, and a little bit on Vortex. Then I did no healing flame, maxed Vanish, no chi blast, no grip, no chi, no serene, no Firestarter, no Sub-Zero. No, 1 point in each of those, and then a bunch in the bottom one. 2 in Ammo Collector, 2 in Bullet Pouch. And then if you look at my stats, I'm level 18. The only real noticeable thing there is my bonus damage, which is 231%. Everything else is pretty shit. 16% extra speed is nice. But there you go, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you had a good time, and you take care now.